Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. My guest today is Mike Burke, one of the creators and the host of Legends of the 75th podcast, a man that has dedicated a good portion of his life to leadership in the United States Army, the Ranger Battalion, and is now continuing those efforts with what they're doing at Legends of the 75th. You guys can check him out. Links to his socials are in the show description. I really enjoyed this episode. A lot of great conversation from a man who made it all the way to Command Sergeant Major and everywhere else in between. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, pass these episodes along. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show. Mike Burke, thanks for coming on Lesser Known Operators. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you responding to my message, and it's an honor. And I do like having conversations with other podcasters because when we spoke on the phone the first time, you brought up all the other conversations that are going on in your head while you're talking to the guest. You said it was like 3 conversations.
Yeah.
Well, now when you talk to another podcaster, it's like 4 because you're saying something and you're hoping that they're hearing where you're going to leave off so that they can pick up and run with your idea, even though you haven't finished it yet. You're like apprehensive. You're like, I don't really know how far I'm going to go here, but I'm going to stop talking and hopefully they'll pick up my idea. Do you notice that when you talk to people that are pretty polished as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're more they're ready to just kind of go with the flow. I think, I will say that I kind of shift gears when I'm on a podcast as opposed to when I'm podcasting. Like I'm not as stressed out. I'm more relaxed. I'm like, hey, it's on the host, man. You got to do your fucking job. You got to lead the conversation. So, but I will say that I don't feel I speak as well when I'm on another podcast as opposed to when I'm the host of the podcast. I was just listening to one that I was just on, and the amount of times I said okay, the amount of times I said like literally made me want to drive my car off a cliff. Like I was so pissed off at myself. So, and I don't do it when I'm hosting a podcast. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm too relaxed. So I need to stay like amped up in the game and on the, switched on.
I find that I mirror the guest, actually.
Maybe. That's actually a fair point.
If they're doing it, I pick up on it and then I start doing it. And if a guest is very polished, I learned on one episode I recorded, all right, I need to back off and just throw the idea out there and let them run with it. Because at the end of the day, when we put the product out there, it's all about the guest. You coming on the show, and this is for you and for the people that know you or you want to get to know you and have a story that's good enough for the public to digest. And that's really what my show is all about the guest. And I find when I'm the host, I'm pretty reserved. I try not to say too much because I want to get you talking and hear your story about what you think about this and what you think about that. But when I go on other people's shows, let's see how many words we can get in. Oh my God, it's definitely a one, but it's the opposite. I think it's fun. And you're right. It is all on the host. It's all on me. And I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I'm just over here making it. But that's
anybody that says that they do, they don't. They're full of shit. I would say there's probably one person that's just like the master orator, but he has a lot of practice, and that's Joe Rogan. And the reason is because he's just really good at going, what do you mean by that? That's it.
What do you mean? Kind of fucked him. No,
Exactly.
But that comes with reps, right? I get the most practice in doing 2 to 4 hour episodes, where if somebody starts off doing 20-minute episodes, you're only getting 20 minutes of practice a couple times a week. Or I'm like, oh, if I do long episodes, I got more practice. And how do you get better at public speaking? You have to get up in front of people and do it. And that's a pretty intimidating thing to do. And Joe's got all those hours on the show and just, dealing with Hollywood folks, and you got to talk. It's all talking, talk. And the more hours you put in, the more reps you put in. And that's shows in the special operations communities that we were in. The more you do it, the better you're going to be.
I agree.
Legends of the 75th. This is your second show, right?
Technically, it's my third, but it's the second one where I've been at the helm. So what I mean is the first podcast, how I got started in podcast, it was actually a DoD produced podcast called Killtank Radio. And that was over at 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And so think about COVID, think about Germany, where restrictions were just as tight, as they were in South Korea. And so we were trying to game plan and think of ways that we could keep people engaged. We could continue to professionally develop people. And one of the ideas was podcasting. And somewhere along the way, when we started talking about a podcast, somebody threw out the suggestion, well, the Sergeant Major should run the podcast, which I thought was a terrible idea. I'm like, you do realize that I don't speak English so well, but somehow I found myself doing it. We did 25 episodes where I was at the helm of that one as the host. And we had such a great time with that. It was a lot of fun, but it was also a lot easier too, because I didn't have to do anything. I just literally show up when my PAO would show up. He would line up, I threw out some ideas, but he lined up everything, and we'd just sit down and I had great conversations with people and talk with soldiers. Cause most of the people, I would say 95% of the episodes we did, they were soldiers of, dragoons of 2CR. So, we were just sitting down bullshit and talking about different things, and we had subject lines and stuff. But it was super easy. But, I left 2CR in 2020, and many people were like, hey, you're going to start another podcast. And I hadn't really thought about it, and I was like, well, I suppose I could. And I kind of milled it around for probably about 6 months. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to do it for myself. I'm going to do my own. That way I can kind of have freer conversations, and I can, quite frankly, have guests on that I want to have guests on. So we ran that for 2 years. It was called Always in Pursuit. And it was really just honestly about success principles. It was about leadership. I had a lot of people that were authors, a lot of people that were entrepreneurs. We had some military leaders on there. But for the most part, that's all we really talked about. And how that kind of segued into, well, one, that kind of became its own thing. We had a blog with 5 to 6 different authors that were on there that were doing blogs and writing articles, an entire website. We had an apparel line. At one point, because I had so much going on, I took on a co-host that he would host an episode one week. I would host it the next week, and it was a lot of fun. He was a good buddy of mine, Mike Levine. He has a lot of practice doing that kind of stuff. So, we had a lot of fun with it, but every time I'd have a Ranger on, there was this thing that would happen. I would get inundated with emails and messages and all this different kind of stuff. They're like, hey, you need to have this Ranger on. You need to have this Ranger on. And, through, a couple different people, Corey Kress, a guy named Jericho Denman, my wife, they were like, hey, you should just start a podcast where you focus on Rangers. And I was like, well, yeah, we could, but man, getting Rangers to talk about this shit, like, that's going to be tough. But let's give it a shot. And, the hardest part of any podcast is deciding the name. That's really deciding the name and doing the first episode. Those are the 2 hardest things with doing a podcast. After that, you figure it the hell out on the fly. Right. And so I won't even tell you the first name we came up with. It wasn't that great. But the second name, Legends, and then Corey Kress, who does all my graphic design work. He's just a phenomenal individual. He understands veterans. He's not a veteran himself, but it's like this perfect mashup. He understands everything well enough to know what you're talking about and what you're trying to get at, but he's not a dork about it. He's not like annoying. Some of those guys that have never served that are like super freaking annoying when they talk about shit. He's not one of those guys. So he's just really been a huge asset for our company, and he designed this logo right here. Probably one of my favorite graphics he's ever made. And I think personally, if you ask him, it's probably one of his favorite graphic. And this guy's designed stuff for Michelin, Nature's Best. Tons of different companies he's done, ad campaigns for and graphics for and everything else. And anyway, so we came up with Legend of the 75th. We got started in 2021 or 2022, I believe. And we're about 70 episodes in the bag now. And we've sat down with people that are hard to get episode, recordings with. One of the most predominant ones is Scott Miller. We got Scott Miller to sit down and do an episode, and that's a tough guy to get to sit down. General Crystal, Sergeant Major Hall, which Sergeant Major Hall, he'll talk to anybody about anything because he's just an amazing human being. But Hugh Roberts, there's a lot of different individuals, these guys that are kind of hard, and we got some other episodes that are actually in the queue right now that are very hard episodes, or individuals to sit down with, so hard that we have to get their episodes approved to the agency that they work for in order to be able to release the episode. So, but we don't tell war stories unless they come up. We just talk about what's the magic of special operations, what's the magic of the 75th Ranger Regiment, what makes it so special as an organization. So you had a guest on, actually I think it was one of your last episodes. He probably described it better than anybody I've ever seen. He talked about Green Berets are the pirate ship in the sea, and shoot, I need to know his name. Sorry, TBI Roulette. It was literally just one of your last episodes.
Well, Chuck Ritter was my last one.
What? Say it again.
Chuck Ritter.
Yeah. I was Chuck. Okay, yeah. And I know Chuck. We've ran into each other.
Sergeant Major Ritter.
Yeah. So he said it best. He said, Green Berets are the guys that are on the pirate ship, just figuring shit out, trying to make it work, and stealing resources if they have to get where they need to go. The battleship, or the huge warship that's just beautiful and streamlined and just hauling ass, is the Delta guys. And the battleship that just has guns fucking hanging everywhere and is kind of hauling ass, that's the Rangers. And it was actually probably one of the best analogies that I've ever heard of the difference between all the organizations. I actually rewinded it like 3 times to re-listen to it because I was like, how awesome is that? He's spot on, man. He nailed it.
Sitting there with your legal pad writing that. I got to write this down. I got to get that.
That's nailed it, man. I loved it. Good job, Chuck.
The guests say great stuff.
They really do.
Sometimes I get so sucked into the conversation that I forget what I'm going to talk about next. I'm just listening to them.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I didn't people are messaging me that Chuck's a legend of in special forces, and they're like, how did you get him on the show? I was like, first, he seems just like a really nice guy, and second, I just cold message people and they respond if they're nice, and seems almost everybody is, and they're just willing to help, and they're like, he's a badass and all this other stuff. And I was talking to my wife last night. I'm like, apparently this guy's a hero, a legend hero, and I'm like,
well, he does have 3 valorous rewards for guys.
3 valorous medals and 3 purple hearts, but I didn't know that until 4 minutes before I started recording, because that's when I start my research, because I want to meet you for the first time and hear your story. And I start looking at it going, God, I feel like a peon. All right, let's do this. But it's fun, and you get these guests. Do you ever get sucked in to where you forget and you're listening and you feel like that private again in, a young Ranger, and just talking to these are now the guys that were heroes then, and now they're legends now that you're out, but you're a sergeant, you're just recently retired Sergeant Major. So you're now in the position that those guys were in when the young guys are coming up. So they're seeing you now. It's like this natural evolution of things. But you got to be talking to these guys and just get sucked in and go, wow, I can't believe I'm sitting across from this person right now talking about this shit.
Yeah. I mean, definitely there's been moments, because I've sat down with probably the best fanboy I ever had. Do you know who Max Brooks is? Max Brooks?
I do not.
So he wrote World War Z. He wrote the original zombie apocalypse book called the Zombie Survival Guide. So he's got some really, really amazing books out there. And I'm a book guy. I love books, man. I read a lot. And I read a lot of his books throughout the years, and he's got some really, really good ones out there. So I had him on Always in Pursuit, and there was a few times where I'm just like, listen to him talk, and we're talking about the latest book that he co-authored and everything else with a guy named Steve Leonard. And I mean, I was totally like, oh yeah, oh wow, you know, and I'm like getting, you know, sucked into the stories he's telling, you know, because he's talking about his dad, Mel, you know, all this different kind of stuff.
His
And
dad, wait, his dad, Mel
his Mel,
Brooks, the Mel Brooks.
D. Mel Brooks, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
And I'm just like, man, you know, and there was there was definitely one point where I was like, all right, so I just got to tell you, your book. And then I was saying it, and I was like, oh shit, he might actually not like this story because we didn't buy a bunch of books. We just had one book and like 50 people read it. Like, you know, I was like, shit, man, you might actually not like this story. But basically, somebody brought the zombie apocalypse, or I'm sorry, the zombie guide to, or the guide to surviving the zombie apocalypse. Sorry, I messed that up. And everybody in the entire platoon read it, and then it got like passed around the company, and like everybody read it. Like that book got worn out on Spring Surge, I believe it was Spring Surge, about 2004 or 5 time frame, I can't remember. And you know, and I just, you know, I totally like fanboyed out. I'm like, man, this book was like so awesome, and people just loved it. And this is back before zombies was cool. This is back before The Walking Dead. You know, this is back. I mean, the only really zombie movies out there by then was you know, Night of the Living Dead. That was the zombie movies out there. There really wasn't anything back then. So it was back before zombies were cool.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
cool.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. And there's definitely been times where I've lost myself in the conversation. And I mean, you know, that's where you just got to kind of default and you got to go, well, tell me more about that. Or how did that make you
Yeah,
feel?
you
Or,
gotta
you
have
know,
a, you gotta, yeah, you gotta go the psychology route. Yes, tell me, how did that make you feel?
yeah, exactly.
So you started out, you're still in, and you're doing the one at Second Cav. Where's Second Cav out of?
Vilsec, Germany.
Okay, so you're overseas, locked down, and the PAO, or was it the colonel, comes up with the good idea fairy to.
I think it was actually the S3. No, I'm sorry. It was the XO, a guy named Mike Hefty. He threw it out there. You know, we threw out a lot of ideas, and that was one of them. And he threw out there. We did like a kind of a meeting of the minds with the PAO. And yeah,
It's great to use technology, though, to overcome, sergeant's time. All right, kids, sergeant's time training. Just put your headphones in because we all know you're just sitting on YouTube anyway in your barracks rooms.
yep.
What was
Most of them
your
are.
what was your what was your favorite episode from that show?
I think the favorite episode that we did, and it was probably one of the most popular ones, everybody loved it, was where we brought on like 3 guys to talk about travel and their favorite travel destinations in Europe. And we had this one kid, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. He was just a staff sergeant. And he literally, the first time he'd ever traveled out of his hometown is when he went to basic training. The second time he ever traveled was when he flew from basic training to 2nd Cavalry Regiment. And for like the first like 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, he got to the unit, he talked about like he was scared shitless. He just lived on the, on post. He went to like the Burger King and the PX, and Vilsac's a really, really small base. And then just one night drinking, he's like, F this. Like, I joined the military. I want to see the world. And he like booked this trip. He got online, he booked all this trip, stayed at a hostel and stuff like that, and just went by himself. And I can't remember how many trips he said because he'd spent like a long time over there. I think he'd been there like about 5 years at that point. And he'd done a lot of trips. He traveled to places that even I hadn't traveled. And my wife and I traveled a lot while we were in Europe. And he did it all alone. He's like, I did like one trip with Paris to my buddies, and all they wanted to do was drink, and he's like, so I never did it again. He's like, I want to go explore. I want to meet locals. I want to do hikes. I want to figure out what do the locals do. And now he's just like this traveler, and he's just got this traveler bug. But that was probably one of my favorite episodes because it was really cool to get out of the military mindset for a second and just talk about, hey, taking advantage of the opportunities ahead of you. A lot of people will complain about the military in a lot of different aspects, but you have opportunities throughout your career. You get opportunities, take advantage of them. And those guys living in Vilsec, they are literally centralized Europe. They can walk if they want to from Vilsec to the train station, and that train station can take them anywhere in Europe. They can literally take the train, catch a bus, go to England. They can catch a train, go to the Nuremberg airport, Munich airport, Berlin airport, and fly anywhere for cheap. I mean, it's not expensive to travel. They can stay in hostel. Hostels are nice in Europe too, and so it was a good episode to kind of encourage folks to do that stuff. Obviously, COVID was kind of restricting a little bit, but I really enjoyed that one. And I think it's just because kind of for a moment, especially with COVID going on, we all got to kind of travel in our minds, and, relive some of that stuff, but think of and, plan for future trips.
Yeah, that's good. Or you could do the opposite like I did and just get well on your way to a drinking problem from being home all the time.
Yeah, well, Europe's easy to do. Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
Europe. It's easy to be an alcoholic in Europe.
You said complain in there, and that, you know, experiences may vary, right? When I went to
Right.
Korea, I had a blast. I was all over the country. I was in a special operations unit, but I just went everywhere. When I was off, I was gone. I was going seeing something or partying with the locals or whatever, going doing shit. And then some people just stayed in their barracks room, didn't do anything. Friends I had from the regular army that were up in Camp Casey, they never left their barracks and they never went anywhere because they didn't want to get in trouble or be out past curfew or anything like that. But it seems like, and especially from a post I had earlier this week, everybody's in a race or it's like a competition to have the shittiest time in the military. Like it's a badge of honor that they had the worst time. Even if you're making a joke, like, oh, you can't make that joke because I had a worse time. I'm like, I don't give a fuck, dude. I'm just trying to be funny. Why is that like a badge of honor in the military that you had the worst time?
There's so many different layers to that. Let's just go with the easy one first, because bitching is what militaries have probably done since the beginning of time. Alexander the Great, when he was probably marching all the way through Afghanistan and across Europe, you can guarantee that his soldiers were bitching. Okay, they were complaining. Even the fact they were able to loot and be richer than they ever thought they would be because they were sacking cities and sacking countries and getting carrying their weight in gold, they were still complaining about having to walk over the mountains, all this different kind of stuff. Like, soldiers are just going to bitch. In fact, if they're not bitching, then you probably got something to worry about. But soldiers just tend to kind of do that. But I think the problem is it's a couple different things, and it's the advent of social media. And social media has made that stuff out there more, and it's in front of your face. That's what trends, that's what catches on, and then therefore that's what people tend to talk about more. And I would talk to soldiers about this, like, what do you really have to complain about? I mean, I don't make very much money in the Army. Actually, if you make more money than anybody, because any money that you make in the military is just yours to spend however you want to. Food's paid for, billets are paid for, medical's completely paid for. Anything you take on is an additional expense. You don't have to have a car, especially on most military bases. You don't have to have a car. Cell phone's okay. We could make an argument there. Okay, cell phone, sure. You don't have to have a wife. You don't have to have kids. Okay, you don't have to have all these things. Literally, the Army pays for everything that you need to live. Well, the food's not great. It's fucking free. Shut the fuck up. Well, medical's not great. The pharmacy's not great. It's free. Shut up. It's literally free. You don't pay anything for it. Your dependents don't pay anything for it. It's not bad. Okay. And when you take that in comparison, go find free food in one of these, inner cities. Go to the soup line, see what that food's like, and then compare it to the Army food. Okay. So maybe sometimes they serve you expired, food, but you'll be all right. You'll live. It'll make you tougher, if anything. But my point is that it's just a natural tendency. But because of social media, because of pages like Army WTF, this is the stuff that's just out there. And it's been one of my arguments that, like, we need to hunt. I know it's a stupid thing and it's one of those things, but like, there's so many great things that are happening right now in the military. And there's so many people that are having great experiences right this very second that it ellipses the bad moments. But that's not the stuff that people want to share. That's not the stuff that people are putting out there because no one wants to hear that. They don't want to hear about how great of a time you're having. They want to think, they want to personify that it's this bad, it's this bad thing, because that's what's to be expected when you're in the military. And you think about it, for the last 200 years, World War One wasn't fun. World War II wasn't fun. Korea wasn't fun. Vietnam wasn't fun. Desert Storm, all these different combat experiences, they're not fun. They're not great. They're not things that, like, hey, that's a holiday destination. Like, that's what I want to go do on the holiday. Obviously, we think a little bit differently because we're sociopaths, but that's not my point. So then instead of having those experiences, well, let's just talk about how bad the chow hall is. Let's talk about moldy barracks. Well, let's talk about moldy barracks. Well, why are the barracks moldy? All these different kind of things. So I think it's part psychological. It's also just part of what people want to talk about because it's what's going to garner them attention.
Yeah, I think people think falsely that the military cares about them when it doesn't. You're there to do your job that you signed up for, and if you can't do it, they'll get rid of you and put somebody else in there to do their job. They're not there. They don't even care if you. I mean, the military isn't a person. It doesn't care about you. If you die, they'll just put somebody else in your billet.
They try to make it a person, and it's not a person.
And it's not. Like, the people you work with do care about you for the most part. There are some bad individuals that get into leadership positions,
well, of course.
that's going to happen. But the people care about you, but the job doesn't care about you. And you said wife and kids. If the military wanted you to have a wife and kids, it would have given you one, and they prove that
it's
over
actually
and over again.
It actually is just, it's not helpful. It's not.
No. There's ways to make it work, but you got to have the right person, and you got to temper their expectations. And that's tough to do when you don't even know what you're going to be doing in 6 months or a year or 2 years. Oh my God. If some spouses knew the pipeline for SF, and then thinking that when they get to the guy gets to regiment, that life's going to be better and he's going to be home more, they probably would be like, no, we're not fucking doing that. That's ridiculous. But everything's a sacrifice. And it's too bad that gets exemplified on social media, is all the bad shit. When there's so much, you're right, so much good shit going on. So much cool shit all the time.
I mean, I served almost 25 years, just a couple months shy of 25 years. And I had a lot of bad times. I did. A lot of times I would definitely not want to repeat. But at the end of the day, cumulatively, they made me the person that I am. I had to go through those bad times to have the good times that I had. I had to go through those bad times to make me the man that I had, the ranger that I was, the leader that I was. It's all part of it. But I had a lot of amazing times. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. I made friends that are family. And they will be my friends. They will be my family for the rest of my life. It does not matter what time of night it is. It doesn't matter where it is. If I call them, they're going to be there. And even the bad times become good times, as time goes on, because, you reflect on them and you think about them and you're like, yeah, okay, that sucked. But by and large, it could have been worse. And it could have been, and my advice to be, people would be is there's enough people out there whining and complaining. Don't join the masses. Fight it at all costs. You're going to have bad leaders, but you're going to have bad leaders in the civilian world too. It's not like the military's got a stronghold on bad leadership. It exists everywhere. Just look at your parents. You probably had a good parent, you had a shitty parent, and it probably reversed roles at times. And you had a crappy grandparent, and you had one good, you had a good grandparent. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Like that's just going to happen. That's just life. Just in the military, it's amplified because of how much time you spend with these leaders, and then also how much of your life is kind of dictated by these leaders as well. And that's just a reality of being in the military. But, find the good moments, enjoy the process, enjoy the times, and make the most of the times when you have the opportunity. The training, the exercises, I mean, I remember having soldiers, that would complain like, oh man, we got to go out into the field for 2 weeks. Like, yeah. What the fuck you think we're supposed to do in the Army, man? What part of going out into the field and doing hard things did you not understand would be part of the military? What do you think we're going to do when we go into combat? Here's what I will tell you is one, the potential of it lasting, especially near peer combat, only lasts in 2 weeks is not very likely. You getting 3 square meals a day in combat, even not in a near peer, situation, and try to invade in a country, getting 3 meals a day, it's probably not going to happen. You're not going to have water supply, resupply that's guaranteed all the damn time. And oh, by the way, somebody's trying to kill you, so we need to replicate that in field exercises because we're trying to prepare you for something. Your job is not to sit here. It doesn't matter what your MOS is. Your job is not to sit here in a comfy office and collect a paycheck. It is to go do bad things to bad people or facilitate bad, people doing bad things to bad people, because that's our job as a military.
Yeah. To kill people and break stuff, as one of my previous guests said. And
Exactly.
everything after that, we're not very good at. We're not.
No, we're not.
Killing people, breaking stuff, and it drops off severely. Like it's, just even little simple tasks like keeping the S1 open on Monday between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. But you're right. We need to appreciate the times while we're doing it, because I spoke to people and I said, one day everything's going to start going really well. It's just going to start clicking with your unit or your squad or your company or whatever, and then the day is going to fly by. You're going to get to PT, and all of a sudden you're going to be in your car driving home, and then you're going to want to get to sleep so you can wake up and get back, and then one day it's going to stop, and you won't know why, because you didn't know that it was so good while you were doing it, and realize you were in this great situation, and try to take steps to keep it going. Instead, you were just rolling with it and enjoying it and not being aware of the circumstances that you were in. And now it's broken, and things are going to get weird because you're going to try and get it back. And you're not going to know how to get it back because you didn't appreciate it a couple months ago when you were doing it. Has that scenario played out in your career?
Yeah. I mean, recently, just recently, I was talking with a group of guys that made up 2nd Platoon Bravo Company 275, and we had this 3-year period where 1, the platoon was firing on all cylinders, and 2, we were just getting the best missions on the deployments. And
that's a long time.
Yeah, well, it was a long time, but at the same time, it was a short period of time. Yeah, it went like that. And it's the saying goes, is I wish when you're in those good moments, those good times, that somebody had said, hey, just so you know, this is literally the best it's ever going to get. Relish it. Savor every moment. Write it down. Take pictures. All this different kind of stuff, because, eventually things are going to change, and in that situation, it was like the perfect storm. I had to leave. Many other individuals had to leave. The war changed. The politics changed. A lot of things changed, and, but that 3-year period, those series of deployments and the leadership, in the platoon and then outside of the platoon, it was just this like harmony of events, and if you stay in the military long enough, you try to replicate that. I took that on as a leader that, hey, I was going to always try to replicate that in any way that I could, and try to create a team that was similar to that whenever I had the opportunity. And I've always been on the hunt for that. And even quite frankly, I've even kind of carried that over in the civilian world also. Trying to do it in the civilian world, and it's possible. It's difficult, and it'll never be the same, but that's okay.
Yeah, everything's going to evolve and change, and especially in the military, you see the way things are done, and then it's the hopes. Even if you're not aware of it, the hope is, if you see something for good or that's good or bad, that you rise to such a level to either implement what you saw that was correctly, or make a change. Did you get to that level where you could make those meaningful changes that you wanted to make?
So yes, I did. As a platoon sergeant, I kind of, I grew up in a funky time as a platoon sergeant, and what I mean is this was a shift from, when General McChrystal, and JSOC and USASOC, kind of identified as a whole that they needed to have more strike forces. So, they basically said, hey, Rangers, who statistically were, the large objective raids, we were doing that. or we were kind of support role for some of these surgical missions, the HVI hunts and stuff like that. We were kind of support roles for either SEALs or for, Delta Force. And, there was this change like, hey, we need to have more strike forces available. We need to pressurize the network. That means more operations need to be happening every single night between Afghanistan and Iraq. And General Crystal, who grew up as a Ranger, had spent some time in SF as well. He was like, well, you got all these Ranger platoons. You got 9 of them, deployed to a country, sometimes 12. It just depended on what, how they decided to mix it up between the, the 2 theaters. Like, there you go. And it started to happen. So by the time, that happened kind of when I was a squad leader. And then by the time I was a platoon sergeant, we were in full swing. We'd not only done it, but we'd prove we were really, really good at it. And we could actually keep up an op tempo. And then also when we got into hairy situations, we could hold our own. There's a saying that's very famously quoted by Sergeant Major Burke, who's a former Delta operator as well. And he was actually our regimental sergeant major at times. He said, when Delta Force operators are in trouble, they call Rangers. When Navy SEALs are in trouble, they call Rangers. When Rangers are in trouble, they call more Rangers. And it's not necessarily because we're better. It's because what we bring. I mean, a Ranger platoon, you lay out a Ranger platoon's worth of ammo, if they're dismounted, what they carry, there ain't nobody. There ain't nobody out there that compares to us. There ain't nobody. Sorry. It ain't going to happen. Because just 1, how we train, and 2, just the numbers, the numbers alone. I mean, even an infantry platoon in the 101st ain't carrying what we're carrying. And they sure in the hell don't have the efficiency we have because we just put more bullets down range during training cycles than anybody. That's just a fact. So it's not necessarily I'm not trying to compare dicks or, any of that bullshit. It's just the reality of it. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is when I was a platoon sergeant, I was, a Strike Force C basically. And I was in charge of a lot. I mean, I had enablers attached to me, in all facets that you can think of, an OPSO that was directly, working with me and planning targets with me. My team leaders were planning the targets. My squad leaders were, doing human, they were doing the battlefield interrogations. They were sitting over in the pins with the detainees. Like, we were building the packets with our intel guys. So it was just, we were not only hitting targets hard and hitting a lot of targets, but we were also hitting the targets that we were personally developing and we were personally sourcing and figuring out what depth, and we had different agencies and, even Green Berets, that we were working with so that we could find what we were looking for and find the different elements. And it was just remarkable. It's just a hell of a time to be alive. And more importantly, we also had the, for all of Iraq, we were the helo package, meaning we had dedicated helo dedicated to us. So if we had a target and we needed helos, we were the priority every single freaking night across the entire theater for 2 deployments in a row. And then the third deployment, we didn't have the helo package for the first part of the deployment. And then because of shifted missions, mostly, for the Delta guys, we then became, it depended on the quality of the target, but then we could get the helos just as easy as we had the third target. But more importantly, we had our own targeting line that was quite enough for 3 strike forces. So, I mean, it was just nonstop. I mean, there was 30 days there that we were hitting a target every 4 to 5 hours, either hitting a target or planning a target every 4 to 5 hours for like 30 days straight. I mean, it was nonstop. I finally had to look at the ground force commander and I said, hey, we need 24 hours. We need 24 because we're doing a lot of daylight stuff. And I could get into a little bit of that, why we started doing daylight stuff, but we were doing daylight missions. So it was, it was hot. It was the middle of the freaking summer. I'm like 24 hours. We just need to hit the pause button for 24 hours. My guys need to rest. We need to do some recovery operations for vehicles, all this different kind of stuff, so because we were keeping at such a pace. And I remember the task force commander, he's like, hey, set up a call with Burke, and he's like, you want 24 hours off? I'm like, yes. He's like, you do realize what you're asking me? And I'm like, I realize it. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think it was important. And he's like, Roger, you got 24 hours starting now.
And when you're describing, these missions. For the people listening at home, this is the cool shit that they make
Yeah.
the videos out of. Like
Yeah.
when you see all of those recruiting videos where they're kicking the doors in and they're rappelling out of the planes and they're driving up, firing the weapons, throwing flashbangs, all of that cool shit that Hollywood makes the videos and movies and out of, that's what you were doing.
Yeah. No rappelling, fast roping, but yeah.
Oh, you didn't do any of that? Oh,
I
okay.
never did any I've never fast roped in combat. In fact, I've only actually like fast roped out of a helo maybe twice. And that was like for a demonstration, but I fast roped plenty of times in combat and out of combat.
It's just the whole
So,
concept.
and just so, yeah, fast roping, just so everybody understands, basically it's a 60 to 90 foot rope that's about the width of a fire pole, like in a fireman station. So
Yeah.
it's not as rigid as a fire pole, but it's, because it is a rope after all. And basically you are connected with your hands and your feet, and you are sliding down this rope with all your kit onto a side of a mountain, a building, a flat field, or anything else. And it's just a rapid insertion technique where a helos either can't land, or you just need to be on the target like immediately. So you don't want to land, offset from the building, 200-300 meters or whatever it is. It just kind of depends. Or, it might not even be a building. It might just, be something else that you just, you can't necessarily get helos in or close enough to, effectively close with and destroy the enemy without, losing the element of surprise.
How long were you in regiment until what rank?
I left as a first sergeant. So, going back to your, the one question that you did ask and I didn't answer is first sergeant is where I realized I can really, really change organizations. And it's not that I didn't think I could change organizations as a platoon sergeant or younger. It's just as a first sergeant, you finally have a seat at the big boy table for the big boy conversations to decide things for the organization, not just for training, not just for operations, but for manning, for senior level manning and everything that goes in between, and where you're strategically trying to go as an organization, not only in the tactical sense, but then also in a cultural sense. If the sergeant major wants to put something out or implement something across the organization, he's going to pull his first sergeants in, and he's going to create buy-in with those first sergeants. He's going to get the input from the first sergeants, and then he's going to ask them to carry that message forward across the organization. But it's also where you realize how important your role is for the needs of your organization. The better you are at communicating, the better you are at being effective, being a team player can impact what's going to happen with your team. And I say that because I messed it up. I messed it up as a first sergeant, and it impacted my company's ability to do a certain target set because of my relationship with, a leader at the battalion level. So, definitely as a first sergeant, but as a sergeant major, very good sergeant majors very quickly realize that that's their job. Their job is to do right by the organization. Their job is to go down to the lowest level, see what the concerns are, the barriers are, what resources are needed, and what's not effective. And then as they take that back up, fix it, and immediately take that up, whatever echelon they are, and fix those problems and solve those things and remove those barriers and communicate the commander's intent, for in guidance for the organization back down to the lowest level. And just continuously doing that so that you can do that so that you can make effective soldiers at every single level.
What was the most rewarding part about it?
Of what?
Being a sergeant major.
Seeing the results, moving an organization. I'll give you an example. When I took over as a sergeant major, my first sergeant major job, I was a squadron team sergeant major for second squadron. Okay, over at the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. Sorry, that was a mouthful. I spent a lot of time in two organizations. So anyway, so I stumbled over my words. But 2nd Squadron of the 2nd Cavalry Regiment. I took over there as a sergeant major. And that organization was having a lot of issues. And one of the primary issues was the officers had lost a lot of faith and confidence in the NCOs, the non-commissioned officers. So really it was an officer-centric organization. It was ran by the officers. And at first, that made me mad But then I very, very quickly realized why. And I got to work. I mean, there's no other way to put it. You know, I took everything that I had learned as a leader, as a non-commissioned officer, to create buy-in with every single non-commissioned officer in the organization to increase their buy-in for what we were doing for, you know, for the mission set, but then also the trust and confidence that they had in themselves, and repair some of that confidence that had been lost. And then with the officers across the organization, I just embedded myself with them, man, and created that confidence that, hey, trust me that I know what I'm doing, and just help me and let me bridge that gap, give me a little bit of grace. And, you know, and just, and instead of just thinking you've got to take control of everything, just extend a little bit of grace, extend a little bit of confidence to whoever your counterpart is or whatever level you're at. And we're going to work on this together. And watching that organization, you know, in 6 months, in 9 months, in 1 year, in 18 months, just pivot and change as an organization that just became this unit that could accomplish anything, take on any challenge, and really honestly had a lot of respect from sister organizations, but then also for themselves, quite frankly. It really, really, really kind of changed, you know, it changed everything in that organization. And why that was so rewarding is because I don't want to sit there and say that I did that, because I didn't do it. That was not me. That was the organization. I just gave them, and I created the room and the example, and some, you know, and quite frankly, some trust, you know, so that they could go do what they knew they could do. And I also got rid of a lot of people. I'm just going to be honest with you. I fired every single first sergeant that was in that organization as quickly as I could. A lot of the platoon sergeants, you know, I changed a lot, very, you know, as quickly as the Army would let me, and the organization would let me, and, you know, got quality guys in. I don't want to say every guy was quality, but I got as many as I could in. And you know, because it doesn't take a lot, you know, for an 800-man squadron. Everybody's like, well, you know, you're going to need this many people. That's not true. You only need a couple people that are bought in, motivated, and excited, um in every single company, or every single troop, I suppose, to move the ball forward. And that's what we did. And believe it or not, where I created the best buy-in was in my FST, which was my forward support company. That company, man, it took a little while to kind of break it, because I was the infantry guy. But as soon as I did, I kind of, you know, I was down there turning some wrenches with them at midnight, you know, and you know, really, really spending some time with them. Once I kind of created that buy-in, it was pretty amazing to watch it and see what happened. But they were so inefficient, like the FST, that they had them working 24 off. So meaning you would come in, you would work for 24 hours repairing vehicles, because there was only so many bays, and then you'd have 24 hours off and another crew would come in. And that was just terrible for fucking dudes. It was absolutely fucking terrible. You know, so, you know, we did a lot of work. I had a freaking amazing XO, Mike Hefty. That dude was probably one of the best officers I've ever worked for. And, you know, we got him so efficient that we were one of the first squadrons to go out, because it was every single squadron across the entire regiment was doing that. We were the first ones to stop doing it, because, you know, we had guys that were motivated, you know, we increased efficiencies across the organization.
Was this your 275 background and upbringing coming out? Because if you come across something that's dysfunctional, and you're coming from that background in the Rangers, which is very regimented, and for a reason, to keep up with the mission set and the job and the customers that you guys work with the most, very professional organization. You just got to get in there and go, this is right. And I spoke to some cadets not too long ago, and I had this, you know, ideas come to you while you're talking. And I was talking to them. I was trying to tell them, like, the relationship that officers to your platoon sergeant is going to have. You know, you're going to be lieutenant, you're going to have a platoon sergeant. And as I was talking, I went, if you want to know what your NCOs and should be doing, what's their job? And I said, does anybody here know the NCO creed? And nobody did, obviously. I said, look that up and read it, and then understand it. And if those soldiers that you are in in charge of are not doing those things, then that is when you need to, bring that up and say, officers of my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their task. They do not have to accomplish mine. I butchered that. But if that's not happening, then you need to go to the platoon sergeant and say, hey, what's going on here? And then if you're not getting anywhere with them, then you got to go to your superior or your senior rater and bring it up to them and go, hey, don't pull the fire alarm. Don't throw anybody on the bus, but hey, I've got this scenario. What do you think about this? Is that kind of the approach that you tried to go back to NCO tasks when you went in there?
Yes. Simply yes. NCO tasks. But it's a little bit more complicated than that in the sense of, the first part of your question, which was, my 275 background. In Ranger Regiment, leadership is easy. The mission's not. The training's not. What we have to do and the burden we take on, that's not easy. But leadership's pretty easy. And here's what I mean. You have 3-time volunteers, physical studs, okay? If they're not physical studs, if they're not able to keep up with the missions, if they're not able to keep up with the training, then you get rid of them. That's it. See, bye. I'm not proud of this, but I literally got rid of a guy because I just didn't like him. It just kind of pissed me off. He just rubbed me the wrong way. I'm like, you're out. Bye. And, I'm not proud of that, by the way. Okay. But it's the truth, and I was a younger leader at the time. But when you're in the conventional army, you can't do that. You can't just get rid of people. And
unless there's paperwork.
Well, and you can, and I could sit here and I could give you some tips and I give, people, tips and techniques of how you do that. But you have to really, really exercise all parts of your leadership. Every tool at your disposal and really, really get to know your people. What I found, and I'll start at the first major realization that just kicked me in the face. Okay. So the first day I take over, do my change of responsibility. That afternoon, I asked to have the entire squadron. I asked the squadron commander, I said, hey, I want to get everybody in the squadron into the auditorium. And I just, hey, here's my expectations. Here's who I am. Okay. I'm never going to ask you to do anything that I'm not willing to do. I'm a lead from the front. I know I'm the CSM, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do what I ask you to do. Okay. And if you ever see me not doing that, or you feel that I'm not doing that, come up to my office, ask me, and then I'll demonstrate it to you that I'm willing to do anything that I ask you to do. Okay. Because I want you to realize, and I did know this enough about the squadron that this is what they needed. This is the type of, senior leader that they needed at the time. Okay. So I talked to the entire squadron. Then I asked all of the privates to leave. And as they left, I grabbed 3 privates. Okay. And I just said, hey, wait by the stage. And after everybody had left, okay, so now all the NCOs are there. I bring them up to the front. All the privates are gone. Specialists and below are gone. Okay. And I just went down the line. I said, why did you join the Army? And I can't remember what the first guy said. I can't remember what the third guy said. But I'll never, ever forget. And I doubt that anybody in that auditorium will ever forget what the second guy said. The second guy, the young gentleman, said, I didn't have a father growing up. It was just me and my 2 sisters. I joined the Army to learn what a man is supposed to be and what a man is supposed to become so that I can be a good example for my sister and also for my mother and all of our future children. Dude, I'm telling you what, I still, to this day, get fucking goosebumps thinking about this. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop. It blew my mind. Okay. And this guy was not bullshitting. He with the amount of conviction in this young man's face was unbelievable. So I wrote down his name. I said, thank you. I will come talk to you later because we are going to make that into reality. Why do I tell that story? Here's why I tell that story. What I have found, and this goes back into one of your earlier points that you talked about, is why do people always highlight the bad stuff? Because leaders have lost their way and they've lost what really fucking matters. That matters. That story that soldier told is what matters. That's why he joined the Army. I found his team leader and I asked him if he knew that. And I used it as a teaching moment. I didn't harass the kid. I didn't beat him up about it. I used it as a teaching moment. I said, this private right here, okay, I am going to use him as the why, the how, okay, and the method I'm going to use for my entire time being this squadron CSM. I am going to find everybody's why they joined the Army, what they want to accomplish in their current role, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can for as many people as I possibly can to see them achieve that. Some guys, I joined the Army because I wanted to go to Ranger Regiment. I'm going to help you do that. I joined the Army because I want to go to Ranger School. I'm going to help you do that. I joined the Army because I just really, really want to shoot things a lot and blow stuff up. I'm going to help you do that. I just, and bop, whatever it was, I was going to help those guys achieve that. And that's what we leadership is actually really easy. Find out why people do what they do. And if they don't know, help them figure it out. And that's all I did. That is all I did. And understand it might change. It changes for all of us. I didn't join the Army for the same reason that I stayed in the Army for 24 years, but you have to have these conversations. You got to ask these questions. We do monthly counseling, quarterly counseling. Personally, it's bullshit. It's check the box, filling out a piece of paper. You should never have to do monthly counseling. You should never have to do quarterly counseling, okay? Because you should be talking to your soldiers about this stuff, finding out what's going on. You should be able to look at your soldier, look at one of your leaders, and go, something's fucking off. And in minutes, you should be able to figure out what happened. He got in a fight with his girlfriend last night, and he's all pissed off, and then he got drunk afterwards, and he's feeling like shit, okay? Or his mom is having these issues back home and he's not sure when he's going to be able to go home again. She's struggling financially, but he doesn't have the money, the funds to send to her. I mean, you should know this because it's your job. You're the mother, father, sister, brother, priest, doctor, psychiatrist for these soldiers all the time. And you've got to get to know them that well. Sergeant Major Daly, he tried to do it, but people just didn't understand it because they tried to overcomplicate it. This is my squad. What was if you ever sat down with Sergeant Major Daly and you actually talked to him about it, exactly what I'm talking about is actually what he meant. You should know these people because they're your squad. For him, what he talked about was my squad is a CSA, the deputy, and one of the SESs that they had in the department, and then his immediate assistant. He's like, this is my squad. Okay, the whole Army, yes, I own the whole Army, but this is my squad, so I should know these people better than I know anybody else. And then he's got his Corps Sergeant Majors, and he should know what the hell's going on. But we just overcomplicate it, and we get lost in metrics and all this different kind of stuff. I mean, the truth of it is, and I'm sorry, I'm going now, man. You got me. You fucking lit the fuse. I'm just going to keep on going. In combat, this is what matters. You need to know what's going through what's going through their head, and the only way you're going to know through what's going through their head in dire situations or their first time maybe killing somebody is if you know them and you know how they think. You know what their triggers might be. Okay, all this different kind of stuff. I'll give you a fucking, crazy example. Okay. This is a wild example. We bust into a house and we got this kid that's just beaten to a pulp. Okay. And we're like, holy shit, what the hell happened to this kid? And anyway, somebody, I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the team leaders or squad leader goes, it was the dad. I was like, how do you know it was the dad? He goes, look at his knuckles. And I immediately went and I found one of my other team leaders and I said, hey, you're not allowed to go in the house. And I remember my PL looking at me. He's like, why did you tell that team leader he couldn't go in the house? His job's to go in there and SSE. I said, I'll explain it to you later. I don't have time right now. And then afterwards, after we exfilled, I pulled that guy aside and he's like, because he was upset. He's like, Sergeant Burke, why wouldn't you let me go in the house? My job was to SSE. And I explained it to him because I knew that guy's trigger, he was going to probably shoot that dad in the face because his dad had put him, his mother, and his brother in a fucking hospital, beating their ass when he got drunk one night. And had done this repeatedly until his mother basically had a brain aneurysm, almost died. And then when she was healthy enough, okay, she left his father. So I knew it was just going to trigger this kid. I knew it was going to trigger this kid. Because, I mean, this kid was beat to a pulp, man. I mean, like, it was almost, you barely could tell he was a human being. And his father had done it. So, like, I know that sounds weird, but that's the level you should know people. And you have to do this. Get out of your head. Get out of the bullshit. Stop trying to overcomplicate things. Do two things: know your people better than anybody else and prepare them for the worst circumstance that could ever happen in their life. And that means training. Don't baby them. You don't need to be nice to them. Okay. I don't mean you should literally coddle them. You actually need to push them past their threshold of what they think so that they establish new normals. Because I guarantee you, when they go into combat, they're going to establish new normals. They're going to see things and do things that they never ever thought they were going to do. And if you haven't prepared them for that, they're either going to sink or they're going to swim. And you don't need them to swim. What you actually need them to do is to find their sea legs and swim like they've never swam before. They actually thrive in those kind of situations because you've prepared them through it and you've created new barriers, new levels of normal. All right, I'm going to shut up now.
I'm having a lot of conversations over here with myself about what you're saying. Like, at one point, I'm like, man, I'm a failure over here. I didn't do, maybe did I do that? No, I didn't do that. And then now I'm having a different one. And that's going to form into my question here is like, if the leaders out there is listening to this and having that same thought, like, fuck, I'm not doing that shit, or I'm not on that level, what do they need to do to, first off, get that out of your head? Because that's over. Yep. The past is over and gone.
You can't change it.
You got to go now. Okay, let's take the steps right now and get into the base word of what you said there. Why? We need to get into the why. Why, or where are we? Where do we want to go? What are the steps we're going to take to get there? Project management 101, right? And that's what leading your soldiers, you got to turn it into a project, or your company, or your whatever. And you don't worry about the past, and you can make the steps and just start making new patterns to get where you want to be. And eventually people won't even remember that old person. And then this is a metaphor for everything, right? I'm sober now. And it's over a year, but I'm making steps to be a better person, and hopefully it'll get to a point where people don't even remember that person. And that applies to anything, business and things. And but yeah, you really got going there, and I had all those different things. I'm like, man, I'm like, fuck. But when people get on, and that's one of my notes that I took. We have this. We love to compare ourselves to everybody else, right? And I would do it, but I do it because I never got the one thing. ODA once you get on an ODA, you want to go to combat, and I didn't get to do that, and I'm hung up on that. I'll probably never get over it, but the show has changed my perspective on things. I'm a lot better than I was even 3-4 months ago. But we compare ourselves to others, but you got to get that out of your head. You have to compare yourself to who you were, not to other people, because you hear other people's war stories, or their triumphs, or their things in the gym, or their successes in business, or how much money they make. Is that person more badass than you? Yes. Were you guys put in the same situations and the same life path? No. You have your path and they have theirs, and you have to be proud of what you did and what you accomplished and move forward. How do you impress that upon people and to pull them out of that and lead them?
Yeah. First, I want to, before I get to the root of your question, I want to point out something. The ability to do all the things that I talked about is because I fucked them up for so long. I was terrible at this. I was not good at this. I'm not going to say that I treated humans like capital, but I definitely didn't care. I didn't care to the level I should have. I just kind of operated from the position of, you come to work, your ass is mine, You got a mission to do. If you can't do it, then you're no good to me. And I had to learn some hard lessons. But more importantly, and I had to have some leadership failures, but more importantly, I had some leaders that demonstrated this to me, and I realized how much it mattered to me and how it impacted my journey, my leadership, my buy-in for the organization at whatever level we were talking about. And I was like, that's leadership. That's what it means to, the saying goes, no one knows how, shit, I totally lost it. Sorry, I apologize there. But, basically caring for your soldiers, and there's multiple aspects of that. And, so the point being is I had to learn that. I didn't like do that right. And there's plenty of guys, if you sat there and called them right now and said, hey, what was Corporal Burke like? Or what was Sergeant Burke like? They'd be like, that guy was a fucking dick, and they would be right. They were absolutely right. But I had some folks that really, really showed me what it looked like, and I went on a different path. But going back to your question is comparison is truly, truly the death of happiness. I've never won the Medal of Honor. Therefore, everything that I've done in combat, who gives a flying fuck? I have no valorous awards. So therefore, I'm not courageous. I've never killed anybody with a knife. Therefore, I don't know what it's like to fight somebody to death in hand-to-hand combat. Right? Those are comparisons I can make. And I wouldn't be wrong. We go on the path that we go because that's the path we're supposed to go on. And just like you said earlier, you can't fix the past. You can't change it. It is what it is. What happened, happened. All you can do is change your mentality and what you do going forward. And it comes down to, why did you start this podcast?
I assume that's a question for me now.
Yes. Sorry. That was a question. Yes. Why'd you start the podcast? And I'll wrap it back in. We'll loop back around. I promise you.
Years ago, I sat at my desk in Olympia, Washington, and I was like, it'd be really cool to sit down with special operations guys and just hear their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea, whatever, I had a schism, and then fast forward to January 1st or 2nd of 2025, I just sat up and went, hey, I'm gonna start a podcast today. And contrary to what you said, I spent 9 seconds on the name, Lesser Known Operators. It was the first idea, and it was just the first idea. Odds are eventually, if you have a lot of ideas or projects, right, the first one could work, and it worked for me. And then I sketched this out. My wife put it together. We came up with the logo, and then the podcast. And the base of the show is, I want to get this show so big and so popular that any special operations guy or gal, when they get out and they start their new venture, their business, or they just want to talk, no matter how big the show gets, if you were in a special operations MOS, you send me a message, you will come on and record an episode if that's what you want. That's the base promise always of the show. And so it's to get this thing, Lesser Known Operators, so popular that I can help other people get their start, like other special operations leaders helped me when I needed help.
Yep. So you're playing it forward. You're also living a little bit vicariously through the stories that are shared on this episode, on this podcast.
1000%. And I'm using this back as a kind of a resume to get my foot in the door, that I have a little bit of background. But I recognize that if I'm going to do that, I better present myself in a professional manner and be a good representative
100%.
of Regiment.
Yep, 100%. Therefore, my point in all of that is your why for starting a podcast is selfish to a degree, okay? But you're going to play it forward in a way that's going to impact the community. And this is sorry. God damn it. I promised my mom I wouldn't go on soapbox today. This is where everything goes wrong. is where people start to use platforms to push agendas. And and then also they start to push false narratives, okay, and just kind of do all this different kind of stuff. If your intent truly is just to give a platform to people that they can come on and they can exercise a little bit of therapy, okay. I saw something a long time ago that really made me laugh and then kind of made me go, what the fuck, at the same time. But now I've realized that it's a good thing. And basically it said, it was this chick, right? She goes, why do men, instead of going to therapy, why do they just start podcasts? And at the time I was super pissed off about it. I was like, what a bitch. Then I was like, oh fuck, she's kind of right. And then now what I've realized is because it's easier and it can be just as therapeutic. People can listen to the podcast. They can relate with the stories. They can relate with the things that they've went through, those individuals that are the guest or the host, what they've went through. And usually you're going to see the journey of how they made it through it. Maybe they're still actually fighting through it. And that's even a message within itself. Hey, I'm still fighting, man. I'm still fucking here. I'm all fucked up. I'm all in my head. I can't figure shit out, but I'm fighting through it. I'm pushing through every day. I'm calling my buddies. I got people that are rallying around me. They're helping me. I've reached out and people have responded and they're helping me. All that different kind of stuff. It is therapy and there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly okay. And it just is a more comfortable environment for us men because no one wants to listen to us whine. No one wants to listen to us bitch. A man that's complaining is not a man. Let's just be honest here, okay? But this is a way for us to do it, and there's nothing wrong with it, as long as it's helping people. And that's if that's what you started your podcast for, then as long as you keep on doing that, then it's going to provide a huge service for people. Because what people need to do is they need to get comfortable sharing their stories. They need to also get comfortable working through those stories and realizing that you're never actually on the backside. You're just better than you were the day before. And sometimes just talking about that stuff is the best thing that you can actually do. And again, there's nothing wrong with it because retirement, ETSing, getting out of the Army, working through PTSD or, whatever it might be, or any other kind of, mental things that you're kind of working through, it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's going to be a continuous process, and you're always going to be kind of trying to work through it. And you're going to start getting messages, man. And this happened to me, and I can tell you when it really, really first started happening. It happened around episode 14 and 15 of Always in Pursuit. And basically, those were two episodes where enough people had reached out to me and said, we don't know who you are. You've never shared your journey. So I brought on a good buddy of mine that I trust implicitly, Chad Jenkins, and he was the host of Always in Pursuit. Okay. And he interviewed me. And for two episodes, I shared my story. And I talked about how I tried to kill myself when I was 12, tried to kill myself again when I was 16. I had a suicidal ideation when I was a first sergeant of Charlie Company for 275 after I lost Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler. And I talked about some of my other struggles. I talked about some serious shit in those episodes. And I'd still became a brigade sergeant major. I'd still have a beautiful family. I'd still done all this stuff despite all that. And people reached out to me and they were like, holy shit, like, if you can do that, you've been through that. We just assumed that, everything had just kind of gone Mike Burke's way, and that's just a natural assumption that people have. And I'm like, hell no, man. In fact, still to this day, I think most things are not going my way. Not, literally like a month ago, I went off on my therapist, like, because she like challenged me on something. She challenged me on something. And I was like, what? I basically freaked out on her. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm on a podcast. I'm going to talk about it. And I'm like, why is everybody against me? Why is everybody out to get Mike Burke? Like, why is everybody challenging me? Like, why can't anybody truly be on my team? And she let me go. and I'll give her credit for that. She let me go because I was being pretty mean. Like I was being kind of a dick. And then she was like, "You done?" I was like, "Well, kinda." She's like, "You feel better?" I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Do you really believe that?" And I was like, "Well, no, but it feels like this at times." And she's like, "I get it, but come on, not everybody's against you." She's like, "I'm sitting here." I'm like, "You're sitting here because I'm paying you to sit here." She's like, "That's not true, Mike. Like, don't be a dick." She like, and she I will say this, like, she doesn't need Mike Burke as a client. She has plenty of clients and she focuses on special operations soldiers and operators. That's what her focus is on. So she doesn't need Mike Burke as a client. She in fact created room for me so that she could take me on. But anyway, the point being is like what I'm trying to communicate is that it's a continuous journey, and having people on. As many people as want to start podcasts, please start podcasts. Like, do it, but stay with it. Don't sit there when it starts to get tough. Like, don't quit, because we need to tell more stories. We need to share more about this. We need to talk about the things that people haven't talked about, because it's going to help people. And some people have never heard of my podcast, Legend of the 75th, but there's a swath of people that have heard of your podcast. There's the people that have heard of your podcast and have never heard of my podcast. And, I got a list in my book of probably 70 podcasts. And if I started reading them, I guarantee you haven't heard of 90% of them. And they're all doing what we're doing. They're just doing it in different ways. But what I will say is this: don't try to make your podcast more into what it is by riding the crisis wave, meaning starting to talk about what's ever in the news cycle right now. Because that's how some of these podcasts get big, is because they do it and it placates the algorithms within the vocals, the audio, the videos, all this different kind of stuff. And then the clips that they pull on, put them on social media. That's where it garners support. And I mean, you can do it if you want to, if that's what people want to hear. But if your intent is to help people, that's not helping people. Talking about that crisis shit, it's not helping people. It's just perpetuating the problems of the world.
I took things I liked about other podcasts and I brought them in to make this one. I want to do long episodes like Rogan does. I want to be comfortable like Sean Ryan is. You just see him there. He just looks so comfy, right? And I'm
Yeah, he
like,
does.
oh, I got this chair, and I got
Yeah.
no wires here. I got
Yeah.
nothing. Everything's separate. I got my drink here, and I'm nice and comfortable. I got a little carpet, comfortable. And then Bill Maher on his, he would say, it'd be great if we could get together and we weren't working. I don't want the podcast to feel like work. It's just two guys in the team room, or gal, whoever wants to come on. I had a Gold Star Widow on. Great episode. Probably one of my favorites. And it's just talking like we're in the team room, sitting, having a drink, talking about whatever, right? And if people want to listen to it, that's cool too. And hopefully I can form questions in a way where we get, meaningful answers out of it. But I don't give a fuck what's going on in the news. Uh, uh, all those things you listed off are benefits of having a show like that, where it's
Yeah.
about my guest to come
Yeah.
on and I help you. I don't know how to interview people. Seems I'm good at it, but I don't know how to interview anybody. And I just form the way I talk to people in a way that I can pull your story out of you, even if you don't know how to say it. Or you got a book and I think it's really good. You come on the show, I'll get you to talk about your book. Hey, let's get I'm a little fish, but I'm not going to be a little fish forever. And hopefully down the road, we can have people back and do our episodes and come back and talk about your new thing that you got going on. Or let's talk about whatever. And the therapy thing that you said, that's 100% real, as it is for me. My perspective on life and the way I think about things has just changed in the 36 episodes I've recorded now. Um, 20 came out yesterday. You're going to be episode 35. We're going to hit episode 50 with what I have on the schedule. Uh,
Nice.
and that's the next milestone. But we just got to keep at it. And if they come, they come, but it's established, right? And if I can get people on here to talk and see us talking, and have my way of promoting it and having my funny content that people think is funny. Oh, they got this podcast, or, he's got this fitness thing going on. And it all just plays into it, right? We, special operations as a whole, is on a pedestal, and there's a lot expected of us. And that doesn't stop when you get out. You should continue to uphold everything that's expected of you. And I didn't do this. I failed at it, and I'm trying to do it now. Um, I've been out for 7 years now, and I'm trying to do it now. But you should be uphold what is expected of you. It's a lot further to fall when you fuck up, but there's what people think we should be is we shouldn't be that, but we should be the best version of. I was a Green Beret, and I should exemplify that in the civilian world. You were a Ranger First Sergeant, and you should exemplify those same characteristics and everything that you were in the military as a civilian. And hopefully I can live up to that with the choices I've made recently and will in the future. And I hope to inspire other people to do the same.
100%. Well said, brother. Well said.
But enough about me. You said the right word in what you were saying earlier, the past. And Legends of the 75th, right? You're interviewing literal, I hate using the word, but literal legends of 75th Ranger Regiment. And recently, I guess you haven't started filming yet, but you're dabbling in the documentary world.
So no, we've actually filmed about 70% of the 70% of the content. We're probably going to do another event. We're thinking August timeframe where we bring some of the people that actually went over to the Philippines to do some additional stuff. There's a little bit of stuff that we weren't able to do when we were in the Philippines. We just didn't really kind of realize the direction things went. You do something called basically scene setups, and you kind of develop a little bit of a screenplay before you go over and you're going to film something. But things happen, especially when you're talking about a documentary, and especially when the documentary was not the reason we were going over there. That was something we decided to do later. And I'll come back and I'll explain that in a second. But basically, we will release a documentary in 2026 that will catalog 22 Rangers from generations going all the way back to Grenada. So 70s and 80s, 90s, early 2000s, 2010 to current, that went over to the Philippines to pay homage to 6 Ranger Battalion's actions for something called the Cabanatuan Raid, which was the rescue of 500 prisoners of war at Cabanatuan POW camp, prisoners of war camp. They were survivors of the Bataan Death March, and then also the fall of Corregidor Island when the Philippines fell. And when we retook the islands, 6th Ranger Battalion was given the mission to go rescue these guys. And it was 80 years ago that we went over. So it happened in 1945. And we walked the route that 6th Ranger Battalion took. We visited many of the sites, many of the memorials. We went to Corregidor Island. We retraced the steps of the Bataan Death March as well. And basically, we're just go over there talking about the history and, what 6th Ranger Battalion did. Additionally, it's also the story of 22 Rangers coming together to, basically kind of form a bond around our ancestors, because we spent a lot of time together. We spent over 10 days together. We walked the route. We did all this different kind of stuff, all these different kind of ceremonies and kind of a battle staff ride, so to speak. And then the third narrative, which was unexpected, and because there was an operational cell, and then there was the cell that I was trying to do with the media team. And so I wasn't totally tracking, but what they ended up doing was they brought over a guy named Paul O'Connell. And Paul O'Connell is the son of William O'Connell. And William O'Connell was a lieutenant in 6th Ranger Battalion. He was actually the breach man for the Cabanatuan Raid. And he didn't have any idea who his father was. When he joined the Navy, when Paul joined the Navy, his dad said, "I served as well. Here's some advice I have for you." And he said, well, what did you do? He's like, well, I fought in World War II. Well, what'd you do in World War II? He's like, I did what everybody else did. And that's it. That's all he ever told his son. After William passed away, Paul discovered a chest, a war chest, like many of us have. And he basically found all this stuff that his dad had collected and had from the war. And he found out that, hey, holy shit, my dad was a ranger. And he was on this like amazing raid, one of the most successful POW rescue missions ever conducted by the American military. And my dad was a breach man for it. And so he reached out to some people. He found, and he got it linked in with descendants. And then the descendants reached out to him after they found out what we were doing, and he accompanied us. So it's also the story, this discovery story of this 70-year-old man finding out who his father was by retracing the steps with us. He was there, lockstep key with us the whole time, and also hanging out with a bunch of Rangers. And there's many moments where he was like, wow, I totally get why my dad was that way, or like why my dad did that. Because, a Ranger's a Ranger, man. Okay, sure, we're separated by 80 years, but a Ranger's a Ranger, at the end of the day. So it's just this beautiful story of this as well. And so we're going to produce a documentary. We also just wrapped up in conjunction with Vet TV, doing a story about the Best Ranger competition and what it takes to prepare for that competition, what that competition looks like, and, a little bit of the culture and the climate around the competition, but then also the 75th Ranger Regiment, which has won it the last 5 years in a row. So we just finished that up, and that'll be a short form. That's not going to be a documentary, and it's going to be released on Vet TV and then also our platform as well. And we got about 3 other projects in the works, to be honest with you. We're planning on doing a lot for all these projects, but the big one right now is the Journey to Cabanatuan, which, this is actually a replication reimage of 6 Ranger Battalion's flash that they wore. So we actually Corey redesigned it, and modernized it a little bit. But yeah, we're trying to raise some funds also because we still got a lot of work to do on the film. Producing a film, I've learned a lot over the last 7 months as the executive producer for the film. There's a lot to do and a lot of work, because not only is this an important story to share, but also we have to make sure it's to the level of what the 75th Ranger Regiment deserves. So, it's got to be perfect, quite frankly. It's got to be perfect. So, but we stumbled upon this. I mean, they literally reached out to me. Some guys said they were going to do this. Guy named Dan Knight, Ted Kennedy, and Mike Hall. And they said, hey, we want to have somebody over there that can help us kind of capture the story of us going over there. And they reached out to me. And then I was like, well, we're only going to get one opportunity to do this right. So we hired an entire film production crew to go over there and do this.
You haven't been out that long, right? In the year?
Yeah, a little over 2 years now.
Oh, 2 years. Okay, so you're a little further out. Are these projects, Legend of the 75th, and now you're dabbling in filmmaking and you're telling stories, and that's really all this is. We create stories in our style that we hope that the consumer can digest, right? And we want to make it obviously so people listen to us, but to continue on the story for the next generation to be, oh, that's some cool shit. I want to go do some cool shit too. And hopefully that comes to light. But like, is this something you feel like you want to do or you have to do?
It is literally what I've decided to dedicate my life to. I feel at the same time, it's because for whatever reason, I've found myself in the opportunity to be able to do this. And I've really, really been dedicating myself over the last 3 years with Legends of telling these stories in the right way. And these are individual accounts, the podcast, going back to the podcast, we've really, really created a name and we've stayed true to the brand that, personifies this quiet professional that really, really dictates the Ranger Regiment and the level of professionalism. We've stayed true to that. We've not compromised our integrity in any way. When I sit down with these guests, I never, try to have them tell a story that they feel uncomfortable telling. It's their journey. I want to highlight their leadership principles and the things they've learned throughout, however long it is, 20, 30, 40-year careers. Um, and it's definitely centralized around the 75th Ranger Regiment and how that was a formative time for them. And it, sowed a lot of seeds and was, the foundation of a lot of different things. Because not all those guys, some of the guys that we've sat down, I mean, they've only served, 4 to 8 years in Ranger Regiment, but then they went on to do stellar things in the civilian world, or they went on to do stellar things, within the Army community. Um, and, then we got this opportunity to go for Operation Kabanaton. And as I was planning this and we were trying to put this together, it just felt right. It just felt like the next logical step as a company for Legends of the 75th. Like, podcasting is great. I love podcasting. It's man, it's the highlight of my week when I, sit down and do 1 to 2 episodes. It just depends on the week. You definitely have a faster pace than I. It's impressive, and I applaud you for it. But it just felt like the next logical step. And I knew I wanted to do more. I just didn't know what that was quite yet. I'd had some ideas. But this, and we'd actually even done a couple things, that I was trying to do. Like, we did mental health roundtables where I do like live events, and I bring on different people and we talk about different issues, with veterans, with Rangers and stuff like that. And those were great, but it just didn't feel like that was the next logical step. Like, it just didn't, it didn't feel like that's where we needed to go. And then it just kind of all came together. And I remember I was sitting in my driveway, I was on the phone with 2 individuals, and I was talking about, like, how do we go to the Philippines and do this in the right way? And it just kind of hit me that, like, shit, this is just what we got to do. This is where we're going to go. And we're not going to stop at the Philippines. We're going to do Vietnam. We're going to do Korea. We're going to go back to Cisterna, Sicily, Point to Hawk, all over Europe, Iraq, Afghanistan, all this different kind of stuff, plus the battalions themselves. There are stories to be told within that of the formation of those organizations in their 40, 50-year, history. This is just the next logical step. And because of just a million conversations, I would love to say, it was just 1 or 2, but I mean, this is a lot of conversations. We've just put ourselves in a position where the 75th Ranger Regiment at the same time says, hey, you're going to help us with this. Like, okay, then trust us, and we're going to make sure it's done in the right way. I don't want to sit there and say that we're the official podcast of the 75th Ranger Regiment, because we're not. We're absolutely not, and I will never say that. But we are definitely more and more as time goes on working lockstep with the 75th Ranger Regiment to make sure that we're staying true and we're helping them tell their story, because there's a lot of stories that have just, and I don't want to, sit there and make fun of any other organization, Navy SEALs, SF, or anybody else, but Ranger Regiment really has not been good in the storytelling realm. There's not a lot of stories out there about them, and there should be, as long as it's done in the right way.
Oh yeah, we're as a special operations as a whole, since Vietnam, are coming home and getting spit on and not accepted by the community at all. And oh, I'm just going to shut the fuck up and I'm not going to tell anybody what I did. And that turned quiet professional into silent professional. And now with this technology, the rise of the internet and podcasts and long form media, well, maybe it's time to get some stories out there. Maybe it is okay.
It is okay as long as it's done in the right way and it's not self-gratifying.
Absolutely. Somebody put a comment on one of my posts today, about another influencer, and and then I went, no, I don't want any part of that. I'm just gonna leave it, because I just don't want to I don't want to get into a war in the comments, and I don't want the page, which is more important than me, my opinions. We're not gonna mix that. But there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do that, and at least if we're leaning towards the right way, that's good enough for me. I want to say this, right? Let's see how you feel about it. I had a couple people on my show, and then when I was speaking, I said it, and it was like, yes, that's why. I feel like I failed. A part of me feels like I failed at being a Green Beret by getting medically retired. Would I regret anything? Nope. Would I change anything? Absolutely not. I'm in a great place now, and I'm fucking enjoying it, having a great time, right? But a part of me feels like I failed at being a Green Beret, and that's what's pushing me to do the things that I'm doing now and the decisions that I'm making now. Does a part of you feel like you failed Ranger Regiment because you brought it up before when you were first sergeant? Does a part of you feel like you failed Ranger Regiment and you want to do everything you can to improve Ranger Regiment even after you're gone?
No, I don't feel like I failed Ranger Regiment. I feel like I did the job the best I could while I was there. I do have a regret. My regret is that I never got an opportunity to be a battalion CSM within the 75th Ranger Regiment. It's highly competitive. I was unfortunately beat out by what the Ranger Regiment, JSOC, USASOC felt as a whole was better for qualified individuals. Trust me, I've lost lots of sleepless nights, and I've had internal arguments, whether I agree with that or not, but it doesn't fucking matter. And the truth is that I went down a path, because I left as a Ranger First Sergeant, I went to Sergeant Major Academy, then I went over to Second Cavalry Regiment, and I served almost 4 years there, and then I went to First Security Force Assistance Brigades. Obviously, I would have loved to have been a battalion CSM and been in the show, been in the hunt to be the regimental sergeant major, but that just wasn't in the cards. Just wasn't meant to happen. But coming back to your question of why I'm doing what I'm doing, it is the exact opposite. The Ranger Regiment has sowed so much in me. I am who I am because of the Ranger Regiment. Individuals, but the organization as a whole. If I have the opportunity, I have the means, I have the time, I have the ability to continue to build up the Ranger Regiment in the right way and to encourage people in the Ranger Regiment to do better, to be better, and to continuously improve and provide them lessons learned from the 70 plus guests that fought the global war on terrorism, Mogadishu, Grenada, Panama, and share those lessons learned. And then, 50 years or whatever it is of leadership from every single one of those individuals and leadership lessons learned, and I can share that with them, then I'm going to do that. And additionally, I'm going to help the larger public understand why this organization is so significant and why it's so special. And it is all I can do to pay back because of what Ranger Regiment did for me. It's not because I feel like I failed Ranger Regiment. I feel like I owe Ranger Regiment.
Maybe that's a better way to put it. But I failed him as I wasn't able to give more. Like
Fair.
I got there, and it was over. Like, immediately, right when I got in, and so I'm always going to be like, well, what? I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. It's like it's a hand-in-hand relationship, right? I want to do all the cool shit that Regiment has to offer. Well, Regiment's like, well, you got to come along with us and do the cool shit, and bad shit's going to happen to you. But okay, kid, let's go. I didn't get to do any of that. I got to do a version of the support of it when I went to the B team and bounced around there and did some cool things with some cool people. I was able to be the best support guy I could be. But I wasn't able to give everything. But then there's a point, that some people did. Friends did everything. They're not around anymore. I think about that. And then I'm like, oh, am I being selfish for wanting more? Like, no, that's my life, and they chose their life, and it's just different paths. Comparison again, right? But it's different verbiage, I guess. We're kind of chipping at the same tree here.
I get where you're coming from though too. Like, I really, really understand where you're coming from as well. And here's the thing I would tell you is that you did something that 99% of the world hasn't done. You became a Green Beret. That it's actually way higher than 99%. It's like 99.99999% of the world hasn't done. You became a Green Beret. You're comparing yourself to other Green Berets, as we all naturally do. I mean, fuck. Kurt Donaldson, one of my best friends. Okay, I got 14 combat deployments. Kurt Donaldson has 23. He
More than
jumped
14.
in. He jumped in on the first plane into Afghanistan, and he was on the second to last plane out of Afghanistan. Comparative, he was on Hades.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
You can't compete. There's always going to be somebody with more deployments, more awards, that's smarter than you, that's faster than you, that's stronger than you. I mean, just go to Best Ranger, you know. I mean, the people
100%.
at the bottom that finish 50th are looking at going, how in the fuck did those two do that? Like, you know, and they're all at the same competition. You know, it's the best in the Army.
Right.
And so, you know, you're never going to be that. You're never going to get there. But you should just try. You should try to be the best, but you're never going to do it.
You tried so hard and you gave so much and you did so much that you literally pushed yourself to the point where you medically couldn't continue to go. What more could you have fucking done? It is what it is, man. You couldn't have given any more. You couldn't have done any more. You literally pushed yourself. And I'm sure you did a lot of things to dodge and push it past the point you should have, where you could have potentially permanently injured yourself and it would have affected your whole life. You know, you probably
knew what I know now. If I knew what I know now, I could have weaseled. I would still be in if I was a little more weaselly, but I wasn't making the right decisions at the time.
Well, and who could you have put at risk by doing that?
That's the other thing I've come to terms with. Like, oh man, if I got somebody else hurt by just saying I was okay or something like that.
If you die, or you get significantly hurt, that's one thing. But I truly believe the thing that none of us could ever have lived with is our actions or our inability getting somebody else hurt or killed. We could have never lived with that. I couldn't live with it.
No, that's going to end in suicide. Yeah, 9 times out of 10.
100%.
And I think it does.
I agree with you.
You guys' op tempo is crazy. Ours is its own version of crazy. You know,
yeah, it's just really, they're both crazy. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And you know, deployment's one thing, but then you come back. Oh well, it's time to train. Or it's time to go to a school. For us, it's like a school, and then hey, you got a tasking to go do, and then maybe we'll get to do the correct amount of training to go on this next J set or this trip and things like that. Where you guys, it's live, breathe, die training, and then deploy, and then a 4-day weekend, and then start over. And then to live that for what, 16? You said 16?
Yeah.
Ish years?
Just shy of 17 years I was in Ranger Regiment, yeah.
Did it ever, where in the rank did you start to, or did you ever start to feel like not that team leader, corporal that just got his Ranger tab, stressed out level? When did you start to feel like comfortable, or was it always just all go the whole time?
Yeah, I definitely never got comfortable.
Really?
I mean, there
in
was 16
years,
there was definitely times where, well, hold on, I'll come back.
I don't mean like resting on your laurels.
No. I know. Like, there was definitely moments where, like, I was a platoon sergeant, and I was like, I got this. Like, it doesn't matter what fucking happens. I know I've been through so much shit at this point. Like, I got it. It doesn't matter what's gonna happen. I got it. You know, I'm gonna be able to respond in stride. And even as a first sergeant too, I was like, yeah, okay, I got this. But I never got comfortable because Ranger Regiment is not like that. You can't get comfortable.
You're
the
gone.
moment you're gone. Your peers are challenging you nonstop. Your subordinates are challenging you nonstop. Like, you're looking at some of your subordinates sometimes and you're like, fuck, he did that so well, or he brought up such a great point, or he asked such a good question. You're like, shit, he might be a better first. Maybe he should be the first sergeant, or maybe he should be the platoon sergeant. Like, you know, I used to have a saying that, and it definitely came into play a lot when I was a platoon sergeant. I knew, well, my squad leader, when there was a squad leader that was pissing me off the most because he was usually right, or he was just way ahead of me on something, I was like, that's the moment that I knew that he was ready to be a platoon sergeant. I was like, okay, it's time to find you a platoon, brother. You know, like, that's when I kind of knew. But my point being is like, Ranger Regiment, that's part of the magic of Ranger Regiment, is there's a dude that wants your job all the time. There's a bunch of master sergeants that are sitting up in the S3 shop or S4 shop or sitting over in the support staff that are waiting for you to fuck up or get hurt because they want your job as a first sergeant. So you got to come performing every damn day. And then there's first sergeants that are eyeing that sergeant major and all the sergeant majors across the entire regiment going, okay, I'm promotable. I'm the next ARP sergeant major. There's going to be another battalion opening up. Like, they want your job. And it's even worse, and it's even a faster turn, and there's more jobs available when you're a team leader. I mean, when you're a team leader, everybody wants your job. Shit, the squad leaders want your job. Like, everybody wants your job.
I just don't know. So I'm going to ask this in a way that I think you can answer. Are you in competition with guys that have gone up a unit coming back down?
No.
They would not come back. Is there no
coming
back?
No, I was just saying that, like, everybody wants to be a fire team leader. Everybody wants to be a fire team leader.
No, I mean, they go to the other side of the fence and come back. Are you in competition with them as well?
Yeah. Sometimes it depends. Not so much as a team leader and a squad leader. A lot of guys don't go out and then come back in at those levels. But definitely with Abrams Charter, which was, it's always been kind of a mandate, but they kind of incentivized it, that before you could be a Ranger platoon sergeant, you had to have served outside the regiment for at least 2 years at some point in your career. And so if you were eligible to be a platoon sergeant, you had to leave. And a lot of people hated it. I agreed with it. I thought it was the right thing to do because it professionalized the force. Plus, it kept the right people, because it's not easy to get back in Ranger Regiment. It's not easy. You got to go back through selection. You got to go back through RAS too. You gotta have a senior NCO, a sergeant major that's willing to have you back, and that's not always the easiest thing. Especially if guys shift battalions and stuff like that. The sergeant major might not know who the hell you are, so now you gotta have a first sergeant or somebody that thinks well enough of you in the organization to go advocate for you to the sergeant major. So that he'll basically sponsor you so you can come back. So you got to have a reputation that'll allow you to come back. So in my opinion, it kept the right guys. It was just another level to keep the right guys in the organization. So, it's highly competitive. I mean, that's why, coming back as a battalion CSM, I had to leave. I could have stayed and been an ops sergeant major, but to be honest with you, I didn't want to. I wanted to go to the sergeant major academy because I just kind of thought it was the right thing to do for a lot of different reasons. But when I wasn't selected, to come back, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was definitely a very difficult time in my life. But at the same time, I was like, well, I threaded in the needle, 5 other times, throughout the ranks of my time in Ranger Regiment. I just wasn't able to thread the needle this time. It is what it is, because it's competitive as shit.
Hopefully, I know it's very easy to say, but it's much harder to put in application. Hopefully, don't dwell on the negative too much and look at the positive. That all of the positive, overwhelming positive.
No, I would not change a thing, because my time is not only as a squadron CSM, but then also to be the regimental sergeant major of 2nd Cavalry Regiment. I would not change that for shit. I love the Ranger Regiment, some of the best time of my lives, but I had a great time doing both of those jobs. I really did. And I had amazing commanders, especially as a regimental sergeant major. Man, they're some of my best friends. I love those dudes. We had so much fun, and we were able to do so much cool shit. It was awesome.
Speaking of cool shit, is there a window in regiment for going on the long walk?
You can go pretty much after you're a sergeant, after your team leader time.
And then kind of to 6, and is that just E5 and E6 kind of?
No. Oh, no. There's guys that have went as first sergeants. First sergeants, really? After your first sergeant time, before you're promotable to sergeant major. Once you're promotable to sergeant major, the door's closed. Now, I'm not saying that there's not guys that have went as SGMs, because there is guys.
For the first time.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Good for them.
Yep.
But for everybody listening at home, a Ranger Regiment Sergeant Major is not a regular Army Sergeant Major. There is no comparison to somebody who's been in the regular Army the whole time and then somebody who's lived in Ranger Regiment for 20 years.
Yeah.
You're talking about a different animal, basically. But that's crazy. Wow, that's insane. I can't imagine doing that, making that decision. But I guess that would be like my age going
Yeah.
and going and killing it. And I feel like I could do anything at the moment in the health I'm in right now. Mentally, with my head, probably not, but physically, yes.
Yeah. I mean, the one guy that I'm thinking of, this guy, I'm pretty sure he was a sergeant major. I might be wrong. I'm not going to say his name in case I'm wrong, but I mean, he was
Probably best policy.
yeah, he was a senior. If he wasn't a sergeant major, he was a senior master sergeant. He was definitely promotable. I do know that. And here's the crazy part: is he was a 92, and he decided to take the long walk. He was not in Ranger Regiment. He he was literally in Armor Land, and he decided just on a fucking why not, and tried out and went to Delta. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and he had a very successful career. He's well thought of in the unit too. He did phenomenal. So he's out now. He's a civilian. He's a good. Well, he's a decent friend of mine. Yeah.
Why didn't you go? Or what's the mood like for that, making that decision in regiment?
It definitely varies by leaders. Some leaders are not a fan of it because they don't understand how it works. And what I mean is they'll think that they're giving up talent, and that's very, very short sighted. What they don't realize is that actually motivates the talent in the organization when a guy makes it, or is at least afforded the opportunity, and encourages people. I encouraged people when I was in 2CR to go. I encouraged people in 2CR to go to Range Regiment. I helped them fill out packets. I gave them letters of recommendation all the time. And I'd have squadron commanders, squadron CSMs, and regimental. They'd be like, you can't give, that guy, he's so talented. He's better suited here. I'm like, nope, you got to give him the shot. And if he makes it, yep, we lose him, but somebody else is going to step up into his place. And it's going to motivate other individuals to rise up. So it just depends. And to answer your question, I did go for the long walk. Between my platoon sergeant and first sergeant time, I went, and unfortunately I was not successful. I didn't make the time before the 40, and I was cut. I was invited back, but everything changed in my life personally, and I never went back because I was not willing at the time, because of just different situations. I was not willing to move across the country away from my kids, new divorce, all this different kind of stuff. And, then life happens. And then I was a first sergeant, and because I was trying to stabilize at the time, because my kids were in Washington State. So I was like, okay, well, since I didn't make it, I got a divorce shortly after that. And I was like, well, I need to stabilize in the area so I can stay next to my kids. The best way to do that is not going to the knees of the Army. So, hey, I'm going to go back to Ranger Regiment. And luckily, I had a good enough reputation. Went back, went to Ranger Regiment, was a first sergeant. And then after that, things kind of changed. Circumstances changed. So, went to the Sergeant Major Academy and then going over to Germany. So I did go. I just was not successful.
That happens.
Yeah,
at least
it does.
At least you don't look back and go, I should have tried that.
Well, I should have tried again. I will say that it is a regret, but it's life.
And that's, I wrote down here the next point, right? And from every military show, everybody that tells a story of doing difficult things, one thing that people aspiring to do these difficult things in the military really need to take away from these shows, first and foremost, it's a very rewarding job. You will not regret it, and the benefits, especially when you're out, to your psyche of, yes, I'm so fucking glad I did that, are immeasurable, right? But there is a sacrifice for every level of success in special operations. You have to give up something to get to that next level. And
100%.
if you're going to take anything from these episodes or any special operations podcast, right, It's fucking cool job. It's a great job, but you're going to have to give up something. And if you give an inch of your mental health, of your family, of your physical health, of your time, the Army will take all of it away from you so fast. And they don't give a fuck about you as much as they say they care about family and family time. That's all bullshit. That's just for good optics and shit like that. Like I said earlier, they don't care about your family. And you will oftentimes, because you'll get so sucked into that life, that you will sacrifice your family, your friends, and yourself, all the way up to and including yourself, just to stay on a team or go on the next deployment or go to that next school, or not say no when first sergeant or sergeant major comes down the hallway and says, what do you guys say? Give me one.
Yeah. Give me one. Yeah. Need a volunteer. I will, I want to say a couple things on your points. The Army, again, you can't put a personality on the Army. The Army's a machine. The military is a machine. So I will say leadership puts a lot of focus on family, especially as, the global war on terrorism has continued on. We realized, as leaders, that we need to focus on families. The problem is that the demands are so high. It's just tough. It's just tough, man. And in special operations, it's even tougher because the demands of the world and the things they need us to do across the world are, they just continue to exponentially increase. We'd like to think they decreased since the global war on terrorism is kind of wrapped up in Afghanistan, but they haven't. There's still a lot of bad people out there, and that's what special operations is focused on. But to kind of highlight that point, I mean, we literally used to have a brief that was called the pillow brief, and it meant at at the battalion level, we used to hold meetings talking about how our individual rangers, how much pillow time they were getting at home, meaning how many nights were they at home in their bed with their family, with their wife. And if, and I don't remember, how many days, we said it had to be per year, 160, 180, whatever days it was. And if it was going to be less than that, then, we had to try to justify that. We really, really were trying to be deliberate about that. We would even adjust. I remember one deployment that the deployment didn't get extended, but basically what we had to do is we had to do a contingency thing like right on the heels of the deployment. And we restructured, and really, honestly, it affected the leadership the most and the staff the most. We restructured an entire off-post training cycle that we were supposed to do for 3 weeks down at Fort Hunter Liggett. We adjusted it all so that we could do it on JBLM, on Fort Lewis. So basically, we canceled that training exercise and we did it at home station so that we could make sure that we got back to the threshold that we desired for pillow time, for families. So, I'm not going to sit there and say it was perfect because it's not. But you have to realize more than any other organization that, special operations, man, the demand and the global war on terrorism has made it worse because they realize how effective we are. How effective we are across the globe on doing different things. And conventional units have realized how effective we are. So not only do they want us in theaters of conflict, but they also want us for training because they want to know how to utilize us in training exercises in the event something else kicks off. So our success is at the same time, it's just like anything else. Like if you're good at something at your job, then they're going to pile more on you. Well, it's the same thing. Special operations has shown how effective they are. They've been over the last 25 years. So now everybody wants to utilize this and put more of a demand on us. And it's why we've actually expanded the size of special operations organizations. Like, we stood up a 4th squadron in the unit. We stood up Delta companies in Ranger Regiment. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we add another company in SF as well? I believe we did.
Operational company?
Yeah, operational company.
We added 4th Battalion,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
now down to the Jedburgh teams now. It's been reduced.
Okay.
So it's 3-man teams doing secret squirrel shit.
But still,
Yeah.
It's, and you probably at one point, it was an operational, it was another, team, but then, they've changed it as, demands have changed and stuff like that. Ranger Regiment did the same thing. Delta Company got stood up. Now it has a different purpose. It's no longer a line company, the unit's done the same thing, and I'm not sure about the Navy SEALs, but, but I know that they did that. They increased the size of them and the ability of them because of the demand, and the efficiency that they've had in the global war on terrorism. But kind of, coming back to, your other point that you were kind of talking about, overall is the sacrifices on the family. Let's just be honest here. Okay. Yes, the sacrifices on you mentally, physically, all that different kind of stuff, but you're getting to do what you wanted to do, what you joined the fucking army to do.
Oh yeah, you're gonna
And,
sacrifice your family.
yeah, your family's the one that
And they're gonna
sacrificed.
feel the brunt of it. You're not
Yep.
gonna feel it till later when you're all alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, that too. And that's a real possibility. But, the sacrifices, the sacrifices most of the time is the family, because they don't have their father or their mother, around, because they're doing all this shit, and, but it is a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice, and it's difficult, and it's not to dissuade people. I don't say that to dissuade people, but, you got to be smart about it. And more to your point, is when I reached a breaking point when I was a Ranger platoon sergeant, and I won't belabor this story. I won't make it a long story. But bottom line is I had done 3 deployments as a platoon sergeant. I'd been on every deployment that 275 had been on, and the sergeant major, he came to visit me on this the third deployment. Him and I sat down, and he's like, "Listen, you're the most senior platoon sergeant in the battalion. What's next? What are you thinking?" And I said, Sergeant Major, like, I still need to go to SLC. I haven't even been to SLC. I've been a E7 for almost 3 years now. If I don't go, I'm not going to be eligible for Master Sergeant. So I need to do that. And, quite frankly, if I'm being quite frank with you, Sergeant Major, I could really use a break from a deployment. I don't want to, but I just had another kid. I haven't really saw him. At that point, I had 2 sons. I could really use just one deployment. After that, like, whatever, And basically, he's like, "Okay, noted, but understand, the demand. Platoon sergeants are fucking dying all the goddamn time. And we got some other guys that got to leave the unit and all this different kind of stuff." And I was like, "I totally get it. I'm just telling you. You asked what I want to do. I'm telling you what I want to do." And he's like, "Okay, And, I don't remember how much time he took, a couple weeks, a month. He came back, went out, a couple missions with us. And he said, "All right, here's the plan. You're going to stay back from the deployment. You're going to go do SLC. You're going to go over to the S3 shop. In the meantime, you're going to help with some, Assistant 3 stuff. You're going to stay back from the deployment. When you come back, you're going to take an additional platoon, a specialty platoon." I'm like, fucking done. Perfect. That's exactly what I want to do. What specialty platoon do you want me to take? He's like, "Well, I'm thinking, the recce platoon, but it might be the dog platoon." I was like, "Well, my preference would be the dog platoon, but I don't care. I'll take either one. I'll take the mortar platoon. Yeah, I don't care what platoon you give me. Like, that's perfectly fine. I'll go do a little bit of time on staff. I'll take care of my family, all this different kind of stuff." Boom. Done deal, right? Fast forward, about 3 months. I'm out training my platoon. And I think it was like one of the last training things I was going to do before another platoon sergeant was going to come in, take over my platoon. And then, I was going to go over to the S3 shop and we're going to start executing this plan. Right. And he comes out and, I tell the squad leaders, "Hey, take charge of the rest of the iteration and stuff." I'm like, "Hey, Sergeant Major, what's up?" He's like, "Hey, I'm changing the plan. You're going on this deployment with your platoon. And then when you come back, you're taking the recce platoon." And I was like, "Roger, Sergeant Major." Like, "Okay, I got to try to schedule SLC. I still want to try to do it before the deployment." He's like, "Yeah, that's fine. We'll figure that out." I'm like, "Okay." I was like, "But, I really would like to execute our original plan." And I get it, and I got it, and I understood. It's not like he was trying to screw me over. He wasn't. He had slots he had to fill. Something changed. I don't remember what it was, but something had changed, and they had one less platoon sergeant than they thought they'd had. And I was like, so I totally get it. But here's the thing. And this goes back into, what we've talked about leaders' egos. He like got kind of fucking pissed off with me, And now all I did was I didn't say this is what I wanted, this is what I would prefer to do. I just said, this is what I would, I would like to do. I would like to do this. And, but and I told him, I understand, I get it. I'm just, reiterating to you what I would like to do if there's a different way to kind of figure things out. And I just remember he looked at me, he goes, well, at the end of the day, you're in the Army and you're going to do what the fuck we tell you to do. And he about faced, got back in his truck and drove off. And I just remember like standing there like, okay, well, it is the Army. You're right. But here's what you don't realize, Sergeant Major. I've already fulfilled my obligation to the 75th Ranger Regiment. The obligation in the 75th Ranger Regiment is when you're in a leadership position, you have to do that leadership position for 2 years. Or if you're assigned for the first time in the 75th Ranger Regiment, you owe 2 years. I don't know the Ranger Regiment shit. I can leave at any time. No one wants to. I didn't want to. But I was kind of, to be honest with you, I was a little pissed off. I was the senior platoon sergeant in the battalion. I hadn't asked for shit. Nothing. I'd done everything that the battalion had ever asked me to do. Ranger Regiment, I was at 11 years at this point. There was nothing I hadn't done, right? Every training cycle, everything, specialty group, committee they'd asked me to run. I mean, everything. I mean, training cycles, I was gone. I was never home. I was in charge of the ladder team, the training for the regiment. I was the assistant regimental master breacher. Like, there was nothing I didn't do, So anyway, the point, sorry, I said I'd make this short. I'm not making it short.
You're good, man.
Basically I called HRC, Ranger branch. And I said, hey, what can keep me in Washington State as far as a job goes, that won't put me in a striker unit where I have to deploy? And it was one of my buddies up there. And he's like, give me 24 hours. Calls me back. I got a job at PLU, MS3 instructor. I was like, what does that mean? Like, you're using a bunch of words that I don't understand. He goes, ROTC. You're going to go teach ROTC cadets up at the University of Washington. I was like, what? I was like, okay. Like, what's that going to entail? Anyway, he told me, and I said, okay, put me on assignment for it. He goes, do you have the Sergeant Major's authorization? I said, no, but I don't need it. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, and I explained to him. He's like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Okay, well, you're fenced. I'm gonna have to unfence you. And I was like, yeah, but if you put me on orders, I'm good to go. He's like, yep, you're right. Okay. So went back. After that was finalized, and I told my first sergeant, who's a good buddy of mine, First Sergeant Bernie Felino, I said, here's what I did. And he looked at me. He said, you're a fucking asshole. I fucking hate you. But I understand. That's a good call. Good job. I said, okay. He goes, well, let's go tell the sergeant major. I was like, you go tell the sergeant major. That's your job. You're the first sergeant. That's not my job. And he's like, you are going with me to tell the first sergeant. I'm like, fuck. I was like, well, let me go get my body armor and my helmet. And we went over there and, told the sergeant major. And man, I'll tell you what, I thought I was a specialist again. And I'll never forget, he told me, you will never, ever serve in the 75th Ranger Regiment again. And I said, okay, well, you won't always be in the 75th Ranger Regiment, so you don't get to decide that. But you put me in a position. I'm sorry for it. I know you're going to have to scramble manning-wise, but I asked you, and your response was probably one of the most unprofessional responses that I've ever heard. And I'm a little bit offended that you thought you could talk to me that way. At the end of the day, I'm a senior NCO. I'm not a sergeant major. I understand that, and I don't think that I should get the same respect as a sergeant major. But I've been here for a while. I've done a lot, and I just asked you to reconsider or to think of something else. And I'm not saying that you didn't, but you could have at least offered me an explanation instead of telling me I'm in the fucking Army and I'll do what you tell me to do. And I remember my first sergeant kind of looked at me like, he said that, and he kind of like, the sergeant major like dipped his head. And like, so that confirmed that, that's what he said. I was like, you forced my hand, man. So this is what I'm doing. Enjoy it. and I went out and I taught 2 years ROTC. It was an amazing experience. And then I came back to the 75th Ranger Regiment.
Just right back. Just right back. Hey, I'm back, guys.
Yep.
I
And
assume Sergeant
that
Major
dude
was
was
gone.
not. That dude was not. And life went on.
Military, yeah, we've touched on, it doesn't care about you. It's a system. But as you found out and you were able to, it's all on paper. It's all black and white. If you just look, start digging, you can find a way.
You could find a way to do anything. You're not. Listen, if you create a name for yourself, you build some respect, you build a reputation, and you have leaders they're like, that is a good dude that is willing to do anything, and that they see you do that. It's okay, man. Call in some favors. Call in some, you can make things happen. I mean, that's how I made shit happen as a sergeant major and as a first sergeant. I didn't have like some recipe or some magic sauce, man. I was willing to dig in and make shit happen and call in favors if I needed to.
It probably wasn't the best look, getting to my unit from basic training and going, hey, I'm going to selection, like in a couple months. I know I've only been here a week, but I'm going to selection in January. But I was a stud, and my shit was always squared away. Never had a problem with work. Never late. Never light. Always on time, right? And I would volunteer for the shit that people didn't want to do, like go to these boards and fucking win. And so I'm manipulating the command team into going, well, fuck, the Ward can do whatever he wants because Sergeant Major comes out and picks out Ward by name and says, great job. So, well, fuck, let him do whatever he wants. He can go to selection and train up and do his thing. There's a way to figure out whatever bad situation you think you are in the military. There's a way to figure out how to get out of it. You might have to think creatively to get where you want to go. But there's a way to get where you want
and
to
your
be.
reputation matters.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
I'm not going to bend over backward for a piece of shit.
No, you got to be squared the fuck away. You can't be fucking up. First sergeant come pulling you out of the brig on Friday night or Saturday or whenever the DUI lets you out of the getting arrested from.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. No, well, that's awesome. And then you got to serve out and be a fucking CSM. What's the one moment in your career that where you just always like, and I'm going to ask you the question again later because it's in my 5 questions, but I know what it is for me. Like one, I can just close my eyes and I'm sitting right there. And it's just a moment of when I got selected as a private. They handed me that piece of paper and the guy he's just like, do you want me to read the rest? And I was like, no, you don't need to. And he hands me the sheet of paper. He's like, congratulations. What's that one moment of all that crazy shit you did in the deployments where you close your eyes and you're just right back there?
Watching my platoon in a 360-degree firefight, and I got stuck in a stairwell where I didn't have good comms. I couldn't talk to my squad leaders, and literally tore a door off so I could get up to the cupola. And when I got up to the cupola, I'm listening, and like literally, it was just one of those things like where I came up to this cupola, I just didn't have any comms. Like I could talk to my PL on my command freak, but I couldn't talk to my squad leaders for some goddamn reason. And and I'm trying to coordinate everything as I'm going through the house and trying to get up on the 3rd story, so that I could see everything, right? And when I finally got through the cupola with my medic and got up onto the 3rd roof or the 3rd floor, and I'm watching one of my team leaders, shooting down on these guys that are in the courtyard, and my squad leaders are just deconflicting fires, telling guys where they're shooting, communicating to the PL so he can coordinate with the assets to eliminate guys that are kind of, trying to come and everything. And it's all happening without me. Now, it was probably 30 seconds. Maybe it was a minute. I don't remember. because time kind of warps, when you're in situations like that. Everything seems longer, or sometimes shorter. It just depends. Um, but I just remember coming through and busting through that cupola, running up to that team leader that's just like hanging, like over this. And I grab him because I feel like he's going to fall. And then, all the radio traffic starts to come through. And I just sit there and realize I don't need to do anything. They got it. I'm just going to help them shoot these guys in the courtyard that are trying to throw grenades, on the first squad, and fire on the first squad. And I just remember like, all right, I'm completely ineffective right now. I'm just going to enjoy the moment. I help do bad things to bad people.
It's a way more badass story than mine.
Not badass. It's just a story.
Fuck. That's cool, man, though. Yeah, but we said earlier, everything's clicking on all cylinders. And then you just go, fuck, that's just cool. Kind of cool.
I mean, I had a unique opportunity in that platoon. I came to 2nd Platoon Bravo Company as a private. I stayed through that platoon until I was a promotable squad leader. So I was promotable to E7, and I was a weapons squad leader. And the plan was, after that deployment, I was going to take a platoon in Alpha Company. And then the platoon sergeant at the time got injured and got medevaced out of country. And, basically being the senior weapons squad leader, they're like, hey, you're taking over the platoon until we figure out what we're doing here. Is the platoon sergeant coming back? We're going to put another platoon sergeant in, what's going to happen here? And, because we were losing platoon sergeants were dying, getting injured, all this, it was fucking wild times, man. Okay. And platoon sergeants were putting themselves at the point of friction. They were the war fighters. They were the guys that put themselves in where split second decisions needed to be made. And so, that's where most of the fire is. So that's where guys are getting hurt, and injured and killed and everything else. And so they just let me stay through the deployment. And I stayed as a platoon sergeant through the deployment. We got back from the deployment, went to go see the first sergeant, and first sergeant was like, I was like, hey, so what's going to happen here? Like, am I still going to be the platoon sergeant? Like, we got to, start getting ready for the training cycle and everything else. And he's like, oh, I just talked to the sergeant major, Doug Pallister was the guy's name. And he said, you did a good job. The platoon's yours. So I ended up staying in that platoon 11 years. And, so the point is that anybody that was in that platoon knew me as an NCO and knew what I wanted before I wanted it. I'd raised them all. They all knew me. So it was just like it was just an organism. They thought before I thought. They knew what I wanted before I did. I mean, we all just operated seamlessly because we'd just been together for so long.
Years in Ranger Regiment in the same fucking unit. I mean, for us, it's guys want to stay on the team, right? Anything to stay on the team.
Well,
anything
I mean, everybody wants to do that. It just and I shouldn't have, but it was just how it happened.
Knowing what you know now, because guys get on the team and they want to stay on the team, but you don't learn shit until you get off the team and you go do something else. Is that what you should have done?
Yeah, I will say this, that it definitely stifled my growth. There's no doubt about it, because I don't want to say I got comfortable, because I didn't get comfortable. Like you asked that question. It wasn't that I was comfortable, but my job was really easy. The missions were complicated. Everything was tough, man. It was tough. Especially because I got wounded as a platoon sergeant, and I stayed, and I should have got medevaced out of the country, but I didn't. Because I had a shitload of shrapnel. But so it wasn't that it was easy, but it was easy from the sense of operationally speaking and training speaking. I mean, it just, these guys, man, I known them since they were privates. I'd raised every single one of them. Shit, I'd pinned them all. I'd put them. I'd send them to Ranger School. I'd freaking, I'd promote them to sergeant. I'd send them to the board. I'd send them to the staff sergeant board. Like I'd RFS the guys that weren't up to stuff. Like every single goddamn one of them. For the most part. I mean, obviously we had a couple guys that came over from squad, to be squad leaders from other platoons, but for the most part. But even then, I'd been at BCO that long too, so I knew them all. And I'd put them through courses and trained them all. So like I knew them all. It wasn't everybody was a known entity to me, and I was a known entity to everybody because I'd been there so long. But I had to learn a lot when I finally did learn the platoon about real leadership and, development of people. I had a lot to learn because it just kind of come easy because, going back to one of my original statements, the why, I knew the why because I'd spent so much time with these guys. Half these guys are, godparents to my kids, pseudo godparents to my kids. I'm godparents. I've been in their wedding, like I knew their whys. Like it was just because I'd known them for better part of their life and decade of mine, So I definitely had to learn some lessons when I finally did leave,
I mean, you don't know until you start getting out and going and doing other shit because you're on the team and then you go to the B team and then you're like, oh, this is how this shit works. And then you go to battalion and go, oh, fuck. Not only does the B team not know what they're doing, the group doesn't know what the fuck they're doing either. And you realize why everybody's complaining all the time about the next level above them. And then you start learning about how all the units work together and
Yeah.
things like that. And you don't
I
learn that
definitely
when
had
you're in the acute.
I had no appreciation that is for sure of what the staff went through or, the other elements, the support elements went through or the next echelon. I was definitely, but it wasn't just because I stayed in that platoon either though. It was also because of the times. Like the platoon sergeants, like they were on the front edge. They were the squad, everything we did deployed was strike force oriented. So you were doing it as a platoon. You weren't doing shit as companies. Maybe you might have like there was like one operation, maybe two operations on all three of those deployments when I was a platoon sergeant where we did something in conjunction with other platoons, and it was because it was a larger objective, or a larger target or something like that. But for the most part, everything was platoon centric. So it wasn't just that I stayed in the platoon. It was also just because we didn't do that joint shit.
There's like a attitude, and I'm sure you guys, because you're operating at that razor's edge level all the time, there's guys develop like this operator attitude, and you see it on the teams and stuff. These guys are kind of dicks. Is there something similar to that in Ranger Battalion?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the reason that sometimes sergeant majors, first sergeants, or team sergeants or platoon sergeants, like people think they're dicks. It's okay, sure. Some of it is they're just dicks, but it's also because you've seen so much. You've done so much, you've seen it done so many times that you just kind of get fucking fed up with the bullshit. You get fed up. You're just like, because you just want to train, you just want to make the best teams or whatever you can, but you get inundated with the bullshit. The 10% of the guys that, did something fucking stupid and, all their legal woes and everything else, you're just constantly dealing with that shit and it eats up like 90% of your time when you just want to focus on training. You just want to focus on the cool shit and you can't because you're getting inundated, you're getting worn out with all this other nonsense, and it's not necessarily, and two, it's because you're fucking worn out, man. You're fucking tired. Like no one stays later than the first sergeant. No one stays longer than the sergeant major, because there's just so much work to do. I will say that the busiest job is the first sergeant job because you have no staff. When you're a sergeant major, it's a little bit easier because at least you have an S3 shop, you have an S4 shop, you have an S1 shop. So some of that medial tasks you don't have to deal with because you have a staff to deal with that shit. But when you're a first sergeant, everybody wants access to the soldiers that you have and the information that those soldiers have. And the best you can hope for is you got a squared away training room NCO that you can at least put some of those mundane things. But if you don't, you're doing it all. You've got to supply all that information, all that different kind of stuff, for schools, for training, for details, for contingency deployments, whatever the hell it is, taskers, all this different kind of stuff as a first sergeant. Everybody wants access and everything from that first sergeant, from your company. And you're putting yourself in that position because you're trying to take care of your soldiers too. So it just makes it even more difficult. But I remember there's many times like where I was just getting fucking pissed off as a first sergeant because I want to go out because my guys are doing something that I really want to go do with them, training with them or whatever it might be, but I can't because I've got this goddamn tracker or this manifest or this, legal thing that I got to go take this fucking dude to, and I'm just like, God, I got to go meet with Child Protective Services, because of one of my freaking soldiers and his wife, and I'm just like, God damn it, or some command and staff meeting or whatever, QTB, all this different kind of stuff. And you're just like, man, I don't want to do this shit. Like, I just want to go do cool shit with cool people, and you can't. So that's probably why it creates you grumpy. Plus, you're probably broken, You're now the old guy trying to do the young guy's job,
The mind will try and keep up in the body. And
Well,
wins.
by the time you're a first sergeant, but shit, even as a platoon sergeant, you're 26, 30 years old. Shit, you're damn near dead. In comparison to these 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids that are staying out to 5 o'clock in the morning, fucking getting drunk, and then showing up and running 6-minute, freaking 12-minute, 2 miles, you might as well be fucking dead because you've probably been blown up, you've been shot, your back needs fused, your neck's fucked up, all this different kind of stuff. So, you're pissed off because you're not young anymore and you got to keep up. You got to set the example for these young guys. So, they run a 5 mile and then they're freaking sitting there freaking drinking monsters afterwards. You're running 5 miles and you're like, oh man, I got to go drink a 2-quart, cause you're freaking fucking your knees hurt, you're going to see the medics to drain your knees, or freaking get a cortisone shot or whatever it is. You're like, God, you're watching these 19-year-old kids that are like, going and doing back squats after a 5 mile run. And you're like, you son of a bitch.
Motherfuckers. Yeah. And being out now and like training and then having a recovery in mind to do more training and just get fitter and fitter. There's no recovery in the military. You just always just go.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's put to the wayside. As you transitioned out of the military, have you noticed your personality start to calm down from being out? I mean, I know I did. I did a TEDx talk in 19. You could just hear how angry I was. I've only been out like less than a year at that point. And I'm just fucking angry. And now when I talk to people, I'm like, hey guys, what's up? All right. I used to be pretty high strung, but now I'm pretty chill. You could just hear the big difference. Are you noticing that in yourself?
Yeah. I'm still like a pretty freaking aggressive guy. And it's just because I'm still like, part of me is I'm trying to make up for lost time, like in accomplishments, like, it's not that I didn't accomplish anything in the military. It's just, there's things I want to accomplish in this life, and things and pursuits that I want to do. So I feel like, so I'm burning the wick at, all ends. I mean, woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, went and hit the gym, worked all day. And, now, here it is, 9 o'clock at night, on the East Coast, record a podcast with you because, this is something that I want to do. And I'm gonna get up at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm gonna do the same damn thing, so I'm a pretty like freaking aggressive, intense guy that's burning the wick at, both ends for sure. But, I've also learned to relax a lot too, especially on the weekends. Like, and the reason I can relax on the weekends is because I know I'm not getting a fucking phone call. I know I'm not going to have to go get a soldier out of jail. I'm not going to have to, go deal with some bullshit at 2 o'clock in the fucking morning and all that different kind of stuff. So I am definitely a lot more relaxed. I don't take things as seriously as I used to. Part of that, it's, not being in the military too, but also I just realized that sometimes like things are just not as urgent. Everything in the military is urgent because it's just the situation, it's just the culture you're in. Everything's just urgent because it's not that everything's life or death. It's just everything is urgent because you got to tackle all those 50-meter targets because there's 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, 800 meter targets popping up right behind it. So you got to tackle those 50-meter targets immediately. In the civilian world, I mean, a common thing, I'll tell my guys is like, my day job is, cause they're just, they'll come in, and they're just, all fired up and like, oh my God, the world's burning down. And I'm like, hey, if you do nothing about this, what happens? Like nothing. Like, does anything like substantial happen? Is the organization going to like burn to the ground? Like, no. I'm like, then it's not urgent. Now that doesn't mean we're not going to take care of it, but let's take a deep breath here and just, it wasn't worth you busting in my office, interrupting me, when I'm trying to do something, some meeting or something like that, because you thought it was, the most urgent thing in the world, So, I mean, I have, but I frankly, I could probably do a lot better. And my wife, my mother, my daughter, and my sons tell me that a lot. Like, calm down. You're supposed to be retired.
It's just a time
Smoke
thing.
some weed. Calm down. That's what they tell me.
It's just a time thing.
It is, man.
I may look intense when I'm at the gym, but
the gym's different. That's my church.
But you can come up to me and I'll be like, hey, yeah, let me tell you how to do this or whatever, things like that. Well, it's getting late by you, man. I got 5 questions that I ask everybody, and then I'll cut you loose.
Shoot it.
What is your response to thank you for your service?
Thank you for my support. Or I'm sorry, thank you for your support. I keep it simple because I don't want to overthink it. I don't want to sit there and go that they're just trying to give me some platitude because they think that that's supporting the troops by saying something. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just, the simplest thing you can ever say to when somebody says thank you is say thank you back, or you're welcome. But
it was an honor. Thank you.
Yeah,
it really was.
That's it.
I would
fucking
put the uniform.
I mean, I'm not going to sit there and go. I'm not going to sit there and go. It wasn't about service for me. It was about doing bad things to bad people, and I fucking loved every fucking minute of it. I'm not going to get into all that shit. I'm just going to, I'm going to make them feel good. I'm going to return the gesture because they're doing something because they want to feel better about themselves, and I'm just going to return the gesture and move on with my life.
I do tell a joke that nobody gets around January 1st because the disability benefits go up every year for the cost of living, and I'll just thank random people, but I won't say anything, and then I'll just walk off, and it's only funny to me. I'll be like, thank you for your tax dollars, thank you for your tax dollars, and I'll just walk off. That's my fair version of thank you for your service.
Yeah, that's fair. That's funny.
What's the one characteristic that sets operators apart from the conventional forces?
Never settling. Never settling. You're never good enough. You're constantly carrying a chip around on your shoulder. A little bit of imposter syndrome. Like you never think you're good enough to be at the level that you're at or the unit you're at. Ever. There's obviously the guys that are, and they know it, and they piss us all off. But they usually don't last long, is what I've found. They either burn out, or they fade away, or they do something, or they become really humbled, and then they realize they need to humble themselves because it's just not a good place to be, thinking you're better than everybody else. So the one characteristic is never settling.
Go slightly off to the side here, but you got to look at some of these guys that win Best Ranger and go, how in the fuck do you do that?
Yeah, no, 100%. There's a female. She's the first female to finish the Best Ranger competition, and she placed. I need to know what's
11th or 14th.
It's I thought, yeah, it's like 11th or 12th. Okay, her team finished, and there's all kinds of shit out there, but dude, she beat 38 of the other teams, and she stepped into the arena. I don't give a shit what anybody says. She's a fucking badass. She beat most of the men. There's no doubt she had to carry her buddy. Literally, it's part of an event. Okay. She had to literally carry she had to carry her Ranger buddy for events. She had to carry a freaking, dead John. Like, carried her own weight. Like, you can't carry your partner's weight. You can't. You literally can't. You get disqualified. And she did it for 3 days. So, and most of the men got eliminated because they couldn't do it. So is she 1% of all females? Yep. But guess what? Men that compete in Best Ranger, and finish it are the top 1% of all men. So she set a new normal, and that means that other women can do it. And that eliminates any doubt that a woman can keep up with a man. It's a dead subject, man. It's dead.
Oh, absolutely.
There was no standards changed. There was not, she got no, there is entire, there, for every competitor, there's 9 fucking support people that are making sure they're not violating or cheating or cutting any corner. She had to do by the book every single thing that her competitor had to, that the other male competitors had to do. And trust me, they were not going to jeopardize that shit. It ain't going to happen.
It's good to hear. We'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too much into that debate.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I
don't give a fuck if you can pass, like they said about the female SF that have passed. I was like, I don't fucking care. Like, I don't care, guys. I don't give a fuck. I got better shit to worry about. Like, I don't care. Good. I've only heard good things about them and the good things they've done, and that the level of athlete they are is far beyond me because of what they had to overcome. So good. I don't care. You can fight in the comments all you want. I don't give a shit. Like, shut the fuck up. What is the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive or redo?
I would redo. The night that PFC Lawrence got shot at an objective, took a Dishka round through the calf. He lived, but it changed the trajectory of his entire life. And the reason I would change it is because I shouldn't have listened. I knew that landing on the X, which means, about 2, right on the target, was a bad idea. I wanted to do an offset, and I let my squad leaders and the commander talk me out of it because we had another pressing mission they wanted us to get on. So we landed on the X, and Dishka opened up. Well, actually, a lot more guns opened up. It wasn't a Dishka that shot him. I'm sorry. I don't know why the fuck I said Dishka.
I was going to say, I mean,
no.
He would have lost his leg.
Yep. Yeah, no, I apologize. It was a PKM that hit him in the Achilles tendon. Pretty much, demolished it. I would redo that. I would have said, no, we're doing an offset.
You think about that one a lot?
I do. Because I could have changed the outcome. It's different when you can't, there's nothing, shit happens, but I could have changed that outcome. And I folded when I knew better. I knew better. I just had a feeling. And when you've done so many, you just get feelings about things. And I had a feeling about that one, and I just suppressed it and just went with the masses. And it pisses me off to this day.
And we kind of touched on it earlier, right? Those decisions that are made where somebody else gets hurt. They're the ones you dwell on. I'm glad that he's okay, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, he went on to have a very successful career. He was a warrant officer. He did phenomenal, but still it ended his his Ranger infantry career.
What's the best piece of advice that you received during your career?
Get over yourself. Told me by First Sergeant Brian Stover. And I was being an arrogant piece of shit. And he said, Burke, get over yourself. And I was pissed off at the time, but he was 100% right.
Last one, man. What were you afraid of then, and what are you afraid of now?
My fear has always been not living a life that is considered significant, and it's still my fear.
Well, I think you're doing a very admirable and great job to continue the service even after you're out of it. If people are going to look for you on the socials, how are we going to find you?
When's this episode going to air, by the way?
Quite a while, like 2 months.
So the best way to find everything that we're doing is going to be on www.killtank.com. legendsofthe75th.com. But if you want to look at me, and you can find all the socials will be on there and everything that we're doing and everything I've talked about in this episode. But also you can find me on any social media platform at Mike space.s.burke or Legends of the 75th. We're on all social media platforms.
Man, you got anything for me?
No, hey man, keep on doing what you're doing. Okay. There's not enough of us out there telling the stories, capturing the stories in the right way. It's not an easy thing to do because, you know, you display a lot of transparency when you do these podcasts in the right way. So just keep on doing it. Keep on grinding. Don't give up. It'll get tough. It'll stop being fun at some point. Just keep on pushing through it. Just like anything, there's always a wall. Just keep on pushing on it. Keep on doing it. And lesser known operators is going to become a podcast. It's going to change people's lives, and it's going to do all the things that you envision it's going to do. You think of all the podcasts that are out there, Sean Ryan, Mentors for Military, even Joe Rogan, these big time podcasts that, you know, now everybody knows and are household names. Dude, they did that shit for 7 to 9 years before it became anything.
Yeah. That's the plan. I'm shoot for the top and see how far we get. So
You're doing good work, brother.
bye, everybody.